So do not put the pressure on yourself to come up with two-tiered levels of answers, but instead just come up with something that you personally, of your age and average person of your age can come up with. That's the goal. Do not put pressure on yourself.
Also, pro tip when coming up with solutions, there's actually a way that you don't have to come up with your own solution, and that's by looking at other countries. A lot of problems that we face in Malaysia is actually solved by other countries. So just now I referenced Japan. I basically just copy-pasted their solution and it sounded really good. So if it's like hospital wait times, like look at the NHS, what they're doing in the UK. If it's something like just reference the US, it's actually stronger for you because you can say that the US did this, it was successful, so let's do it in the future. So that's a free solution for you guys.
If my interviewer is staring at me, should I stare back and remain eye contact to look confident? Okay, funny story. So if you're taking A levels, you should take the IELTS exam, right? And we have a teacher that deducted marks because they weren't staring at the teacher during the test, like the speaking test. So yes, you should try and make eye contact, or at least do not look down. Don't look down. Now you can look down the thing, but when you're answering, you remember body posture is confident. Body posture is important. You need to show that you're confident. So the one way you can show your confidence is by looking front. You might not be able to like maintain eye contact all the time, but just look engaged. Look engaged in the conversation. Like look at me right now. I'm like sitting up right now, right? Clap. Okay. So yeah, just try and maintain eye contact, but I know that it's gonna get awkward. So it's okay to look like away a bit, but just try and make yourself seem like you're confident in your answer, and looking at the interviewer is one way to do so. And also, there's actually nothing wrong with the interviewer staring at you. It's perfectly fine. In that interview room, they have 3 interviewers and 1 interviewee. So who else would they stare at, right? So there's nothing wrong with the interviewer staring at you. Your role is to allocate time for you to look at every interviewer. So although you have 1 interviewer like looking dead into your eyes, but your role is to look at him and the other 2 interviewers possibly. So allocate time to give everyone the equal amount of attention. But do emphasize on the interviewer that asks the question. Alright? That's the last question that we're able to take for this slot.
Just the last bit of advice, just be you, be confident, go in there, be prepared for it, so jangan have to ask. Anything that they ask, you have a way of answering it better. So just try your best to do it.
Clap, 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 clap. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, that was a very informative session. So next up, I would like to invite a case study session with Ezrin, Victor, and Raymond. Give them a round of applause.
Alright, hi guys. Hi, oh yes, thank you guys, I love it. Okay, but you guys do seem a bit, honestly, dead, yeah. I can see some of you guys closing your eyes. Yeah, I have my juniors over there. I can see Oda, you barely see your eyes open. Right? And so, before we start, we're going to gatekeep our secrets a bit. And let's play a little game. It's almost lunch. So, okay, even chat, I want you guys to join this as well, right? On a count of 3, I want everybody to scream their favorite Malaysian food, alright? First, maybe you can be getting it for lunch, okay? 3, 2, 1. I said scream! 3, 2, 1! Yeah, that's much better. Alright, so let's start off, right? Let's start with a little introduction. My name is Victor. I am a Petra scholar, if it wasn't obvious enough, right? And I'll be passing off to the 2 of them first.
Oh, okay. So I'm Wei Hern. You can call me G by my surname, and then I'm a bank and scholar who will be explaining all of that about case studies later on.
And hi, I'm Ezrin, and I'm a YK scholar. Yeah, I don't know. Alright. Back to Victor.
Alright, so there's 2 green scholarships up here with the trust is better on, guys. Alright, so let's start off with a little introduction of what a case study actually is. Right? Allow me to carry my iPad because I'm blind. Right? So a case study is really just a session where you are given a task in groups to resolve contemporary issues or problems. What does this actually mean? Right? So normally they're going to give you a problem that's happening in current world, and you and your team have to identify that problem and also find a solution on how to overcome it, right? So it's really testing your skills to speak, creativity, and also ability to work in a team. So next slide, please. Alright, so I'll be speaking about the Petronas case study. Alright, for those that don't know, this is like the Petronas gang symbol, bro. This is like the gang symbol to represent Petronas. And if you guys make it here, you can rejoice because it will be the final stage of the scholarships application process, right? So during this time, you will be in a virtual session, and it's normally like 5 to 6 people, it depends on your group. Where you'll be observed by two panelists assessing your every move, right? So even during discussions, they will be in that room, and even while you're presenting. Next slide, please. Alright, let's go over the flow of the case study itself. Let's start with the first thing, introductions. When you get into the room, I'll have one simple explanation for this. It's 1 minute, go, impress. Right? So during this time, you will be given, they'll pretty much ask you to the very basics, your name, where you come from, that thing, right? But that's not going to catch the eye of your interviewer. Well, okay, for example, if my time, I did the basics of what they asked, what course I was applying for, a little history of my co activities in school, and to end it off on like something to catch their mind, I said one random fact is I have watched How I Met Your Mother all 9 seasons over 10 times, right? So that's something just to catch the attention of your interviewer. Secondly, material analysis, right? That's how I pronounce it. I think so. So everybody is given 15 minutes to analyze the same material. At the end, each person is asked to give and explain their ideas about the case study in 5 minutes. So I'm not too sure about this year whether it will be physical or not, but during my time it was still virtual, so we're all in like a team session, Microsoft Teams, and the interviewer really just share screen, okay, read this, and you have to write out your points. So during my time it was about mental health issues among Gen Z students. Oh, about this, professionals really read up online about all the case studies, because the one I got is exactly something that I read up before. So thankfully I could kind of navigate it a bit easier compared if I didn't, right? So during that 5 minutes, you will have to talk about why this issue is present, how to overcome it in your ideas, and really just figure things out, right? So if you are scared people are going to take your points, volunteer, go first, right? Or what I did was I wanted to integrate other people's points into my own speech, right? Because they're talking about how to overcome a problem. And my idea was to create a website. So during my time, I had 6 people in my group, right? So I ended up going second last. I let everybody else go before me, and I integrated their points into mine. Because some of them, they said we could have therapy sessions for the Gen Z students. So I integrated it into my website by saying people can register for therapy sessions through that website and also have virtual meetings, right? Okay, let's carry on to discussion. So after everybody has gone through their little 5-minute speech, you will be given 30 minutes in the group to come up with a consensus solution. So pretty much figure out what is the best course of action, right? During my interview, it was relatively simple for all of us to decide on something because we just decided to combine a few ideas and make it into a website. But in some cases, you might have conflicting ideas. So what do you do in that case? This is where you really have to either you have to do 2 things. One, you have to defend your point, and 2, you also have to concede. You have to concede when people bring up issues with your point that are very relevant, and that's where, as a group, you guys can figure out what can we change, what can we ubah to make it better, right? And also, this time will be given to prepare for your presentation. So, presentation will be pretty much explain to the interviewers what is the best course of action to overcome this problem, right? So you guys can do it anyhow you want, right? You could make it into a Google Docs, a Google Slides, or whatever you guys want to do, right? You guys, it's completely up to you. It's free way to do anything. Okay, and last but not least, the presentation itself. So everybody in the group will be given time to present. This will be up to your own allocation. So make sure that everybody gets their time equally. Just to make it fair for everybody, and it also doesn't seem like trying to hog the room. And also be prepared that the panelists will ask you questions after presentation, right? So it could be, how I put this. Mine, it was something that we didn't think of at all, and we had to go in on the spot. Because they asked, how do we plan to finance this internet website? And we all were like, oh damn, we forgot about that. So we really just had to come up, going on the spot, everybody chipped in ideas. It didn't look as clean as it should have. So we're doing your discussion period, trying to cover all the bases of what you guys can think of. All right, and next slide, please. Let's go through some tips. All right, let's start off with the first one, which is don't be caught napping, guys. All right, so this isn't a classroom, right? During your interview session, you can't be sitting at the back of the class falling asleep. What you can do is to know what your teammates said as well as what you said. What does this mean? So know their material as well as you know yours. Be able to take points from their whatever they said and combine it with yours off the top of your head without having to go through your notes. Also, yeah, when you guys write things, keep it organized. I think I had to spend like 5 minutes trying to sort things out after the end. And this will help better compare ideas and weigh the pros and cons of everything. So, in other words, your discussion period becomes a lot more smooth. And also, don't forget that interviewers will be looking during that period. All right, next up, we have ask questions, right? So, leave nothing in doubt. Ask your teammates for clarification of their ideas, or even the panelists if their instructions are unclear. Right? It really could be anything. Like during my time, one of my roommates, his name, oh sorry, I won't name drop. But his computer ran out of battery, so he had to rush to go get his charger, and we all paused waiting for a while. So it's like this awkward silence. And I realized that one of the interviewers had TPM, like bracket TPM and their name for their call handle. So I pretty much just asked what TPM was, and TPM ended up being their job title, and from there we just sparked a 5-minute conversation about what they did and how they are at their point of time. So we found out that they were also professional scholars, and that also just dragged on to, oh, what's your experience when you were overseas, type of thing, right? So it just like cuts a bit of the awkwardness in that sense. Yeah, and next slide, please. Last but not least is be nice, right? The panelists won't only be judging your skills, but also the person that you are as a whole. Respect your teammates and their ideas, speak with a nice tone, and pick your words carefully, right? So this could really mean anything. Don't undermine any teammate. And one thing that, okay, if I look back during my interview, one thing I would change is, to be honest, my roommates and I, we kind of left one person out of the discussion, right? So that was really bad on our end until one person invited them into the conversation, right? Ask about their opinions. That's something you guys really should take note of during your interview sessions. Even if it's a group interview session, you try to ask for other people's opinions if they're being quiet. Looks like you're an inclusive person, you could say, right? And I think that is all from mine. So I will pass it off to Mir.
So thank you for the very informative Petronas case study. So now I'm going to move on to Bank Negara Malaysia, which case study is quite a big part for the intro, for the part of the interview. So okay, for starters, I'm going to just use my phone so I can make sure that I deliver all my message. The case study, unlike Petronas, which is done online, it's done physically at the center, which is Sasana Kijang. You can see the picture back there. So other than case study before that, what's actually different is there is a group presentation before that. What's the difference? I will explain later, but I'll focus on case study first. And each group consists of approximately 8 to 10 candidates, and then there will be 3 panelists for each group that will judge your air reaction or whatever that you say. So if it wasn't mentioned before, actually those people who were shortlisted for interview were about 150 to 200 people every year. So you have to make a video before this interview date. And for the 2022 interview, right, it was actually 2 days and 1 night, so we just went there. And then the first day was kind of like ice-breaking session, less formal. And then the second day is very intensive case study, group presentations, interviews, all in 1 day. So about the attire that was mentioned by Adlan and Harif just now. It was smart casual, which is alright for the first day. Everyone was wearing like this office attire, smart casual. But then the next day, I don't know why it was like an unspoken rule or something. But then everybody was just wearing blazers like they're going for a wedding or something. I don't know. Yeah. So some materials for the case study, some materials and information will be given to each group. For example, for our time, it's like plants or crop or whatever like that. I can't disclose too much because bank policy. And about 30 minutes are given to each group to discuss different options of task given. Basically, it's more like they give you a few selections and then you have to discuss with your groupmate about what's the best solution to it. Actually, there's no right or wrong answer or anything. It's more like they want to see how you discuss with your roommates and how you communicate, your teamwork, and lastly, like how you convince the panelists on the decisions you make. Okay, next slide. Okay, so all candidates will be given about 10 to 15 minutes to present their collective solutions after the, what do you call it? After discussing together. Then they provide you like mahjong paper and so on to write or to draw mind map or whatever you want, but you cannot use your phone. And then one tip about from this is that make sure that you split your task equally. Like from my group, right, we split like who will be writing on the mahjong paper, which we kind of separate each other. Each of us also write something on it. But then we also need to do like some brainstorming, like we'll do this part first, and then we'll do the next, the other person will focus on the next part and so on so that you can finish it on time. Time is quite essential here, so we must make sure that we finish everything before the presentation starts. And finally, the panelists will be asking questions after we present and related to the presentation, and candidates will provide elaborations. There's no specific time frame for it. For the questions, right, generally it would take about, I guess, 20 minutes, but for my group specifically, we took the longest time. The panelists just like really grilled us with whatever type of questions, very hard questions. Shami here, yeah, Shami was in my group back in the Bank interview, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, honestly, but we still have to try our best to tell we like how to solve the problem, how to convince them to uh, to accept our decision. Like I remember there's one point in the interview, the panelists just asked us like, oh, so basically you're just like guessing your way whether it's right or wrong to convince us that take your idea lah. And then we actually didn't really know how to answer that. So we still have to try like it may not be to say like it may not be the best idea, but then we still strongly believe that this is the best solution that we have because we come to this solution as a group and so on. We have to convince the panelists. Okay, so next slide. Oh, tips really. For our batch, right? I just want to add on like for the interview, right? Because it wasn't mentioned earlier on, we have to stay there. I think with Bangalore is the only interview where we have to stay there for one night. Previously it was even more, it was 3 days 2 nights, but then because of MCO it became online, and then just last year they made it 2 days and one night. So for our batch we stayed in Asia Schools of Business Residential, which is actually a really good accommodation. I would say as good as like 5-star hotels. They even provide us like shampoos or everything. It just feels really good, yeah. So even though like it's hard to get the scholarship itself, if you can qualify for the interview, it's actually really good. Really, that's my initial plan. I was like, okay, I don't have to get a scholarship. I just want to get to the interview and enjoy whatever they have there. The food is really good actually. I hope that motivates some of you to just apply and have the experience to meet some new people and so on, because it's actually a really nice experience to meet these bunch of people, whether they get scholarship or not, or whether we get scholarship or not. So back to the tips. Make use of your time wisely. This is actually for everything. Can be used for everything. You must show the panelists that you and your group can actually finish a task on time. This is actually a really important thing, which we generally, as a population, sometimes we are just like we don't really respect time. We are late a lot of the time. So we must show them that we are not like the rest of the people. We must show them that we stand out. So ensure everyone has equal input and useful role in the case study. like I said just now, assign someone to write on the mahjong paper, mind map, different tasks. You assign different people or different groups of people to work on it together based on how heavy the task can be. And then, since the decision is made at a group, you should try to convince the panelists why your group's decision is the most feasible one. Don't be like the panelists just ask you like, okay, so they challenge you with the idea with something like, but the other solution would be better. Don't just agree by yourself because you actually came to the decision as a team. So you must stick with your team values and convince back to the panelists why actually you think as a group that you have the best solution. So as hectic as the interview process is, just try to enjoy your process and meet new friends. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, honestly. So there are many, how to say, there are many hectic moments, but then just enjoy the process. I know every one of us are nervous during presentations and all, and there are like extroverts and introverts, right? For those introverts, we have to really go out of our boxes to like to express ourselves. Even though we cannot express as much right, as extroverts, right? Then we must at least show the panelists that we can show them what we are, who we are. If we don't talk, then they'll just think like, oh, this guy cannot how to present how to present like that, how to get a scholarship. They don't even know you if you don't talk. So yeah, next. Okay, think of all the possible pros and cons to the decision made and prepare a good answer to these shortcomings. Like, let's say, like I said just now, I gave you an example, like they suggest you a better alternative solution to it. But then you should stick to your answer or discuss with your group what are the pros and cons before the presentation even starts. So, like for example, let's say okay, you choose you want to plant banana tree instead of papaya tree. So why banana tree? What are the pros of banana tree? What are the cons of banana tree? Just state that down somewhere in your notes. You don't have to state it down during your presentation, but then prepare this when the panelists ask you questions. So actually, you can have some guidance to answer the question instead of just standing there and be quiet. And do not crack under pressure. Okay, at first when I first wrote this, it was pretty funny lah. It's like, how do you not crack under pressure? Just tell people don't crack under pressure. But then, how? There's actually no way to teach you how to not crack under pressure. Like just now, like I just said, just imagine that you're talking to your friend or to your uncle, or like practice yourself in front of the mirror, something like that. But then this is all the practice you can do. You just have to keep trying. Like if you don't know the answers to something, just answer the question by saying like, oh, I'm sorry, I did not really know the answer to this question. May I pass it on to someone else in the team who actually wants to answer this question or something like that. Just don't be quiet and stay silent because it does not give a good impression to the panelists and whatever lah. Okay. Oh, okay, group presentation. I also almost forgot about that. So group presentation is something before the case study, but it's actually something, it's a similar thing, but in a very different atmosphere, I would say. Because case study is something very serious. You can't joke about it. It's better not to joke about it. You can try, but then maybe it will cost you a scholarship, or I don't know. But then, no one has done that before at least. But for group presentation, it's actually where you express your creativity. Like they might ask you to build like build a bridge that could withstand the greatest strength or could withstand the most mass or whatever, something like that. So you must create a prototype and again present it with your group. But then I remember for my time, which is just last year, it's like someone presented the idea of like, oh, flying UFO, which can fly, has legs that can grow, and then it's basically like a comedy lah. It just presented in front, and then all of us just laugh and something like that. So like, and then we asked our own panelists, actually, is it better to be somewhat comedic and capture people's attention, or be more formal? So she answered us, it comes down to like actually what image that you want to portray to them. For bank negara, right, it is something that is quite professional. So generally, it is better to it is safer to be professional. You can crack jokes, but not too much. But then you must have a realistic solution to everything instead of just like create like UFO flying around in space, BSing your way through lah. But then if you can capture people's attention and you can convince people enough, it is a good thing to do, but a risky thing to do. Yeah, so quoted there by myself. Group presentation is where you express your creativity, and case study is where you present your analytical and logical thinking. Okay, I think that's all right. Yep, okay, so moving on to Yayasan Khazanah. Woo!
Okay, so for Khazanah. Alright, so for this case study, I would say it is quite complex in a sense. So first of all, a small introduction. So unlike Petronas for case study, the last stage, for Khazanah, this is literally the halfway point. This is stage 3. This is the first physical stage that you will be a part of as of 2022, what I experienced. So you will be assigned into groups of 5 and you have to work on a case study together while being observed by 2 panelists. And of course, this group is just like a random group that's pre-assigned. You don't know these people. So like I think they mentioned just now, like be nice and have fun, but also because it is beneficial for things like this, you don't want to walk into the case study with 4 strangers that you don't really know that well. Like try to break the ice before the case study itself. And so this stage will be testing a range of skills. They'll be testing a lot of things from how you analyze material, how you communicate with other people, and then how you present that information to panelists. So I would say this stage is quite vital because through like the previous 2 stages where you're just doing tests and things like that, this is the first stage where panelists can actually see you and see what you're made of. Okay? So the stages are material analysis, the discussion, and last would be the presentation and the reflection. So next slide. Alright, so going more into the actual case study itself. So for Khazanah, the material analysis is like this. You enter the room with your 4 teammates, and each of you will have a binder in front of you. In that binder are 2 resumes and a few articles. And your job is you have to go through all of it in like a short time duration for the case study itself. So you're all like in a fictional, like you guys are like a fictional work team, I guess you could say, and you guys have to work together to hire these people. So if there's 5 of you, there are 10 resumes because each of you have 2. So then you have to discuss as who would be the best for the roles that were given. So the panelists will tell you, oh, we need a financial analyst, we need someone to do marketing, and like it'll be limited slots. So you have 10 resumes but only 5 posts, and they'll even give you a financial limit. Like in the resumes they will say like how much they request for the salary to be, but you have to remember that you're a company, so you have limited funds, and they will tell you that from the get-go. Like you only have this much, and so that means like if let's say a resume was of someone that was suitable, but they could be requesting a salary that's too high. So you do have to consider a lot of different factors when you go through these resumes. As for the articles, they are like pertaining to just sort of like job recruitment things, just like general tidbits and stuff like that. So your job is to hire the best employees possible, but also you have to try to get your 2 resumes into those slots. But for me personally, I did not get 2 of my resumes into the slots. Both of them did not make it through because I'll explain more about it later. So then the discussion, after you go through all the material, immediately you have to discuss it with your group mates. And in the room that we were in, there was a whiteboard. So when they say, okay, you may discuss now, immediately everyone just gets up and just starts discussing. And so you will all fall into like your roles quite naturally, like someone will be the leader, someone will give the information and things like that. And so the panelists will just be watching you. So the roles you fall into, the facts you present, the skills you show will shine the most here. So really, this discussion, you make the most of it. Because this is where they will like truly observe who you are, okay? And last will be the presentation. So after you finish discussing with your team and you decided the employees that you want to hire, you guys will sit down again and then they will ask you like, okay, so who are the 5 people that you pick and why? And so someone will present it, everyone will give their own reflections and thoughts like, oh, I don't think this one was really that suitable because they're not really suitable for the job scope. They don't really like doing this specific task that's specific for the job that they want, stuff like that. Okay, so yeah, be confident in your delivery. Next slide. Okay, so now I'll go a bit more into detail about like personal experiences and general tips. So first of all, the material analysis, the duration is very short. Like for me personally, I'll say it's very short. And this is like a common theme with like, I would say like Asana, because for like stage 2, when you go through all those tests, there are like more questions than minutes, which is it's like a really strict time constraint. And this one, lagi lah. And it's in like a physical setting. You have to go through these resumes, which are like classic Word document resumes. It's like front to back, laminated, double-sided. You have to read all of it and the articles. And then after that, you have to talk about it with other people. So those resumes are like really important because you will be the only one reading those 2 resumes. They're yours. You will be the only one reading them and the only one fighting for them. So you really have to go through this properly and present them properly. Like go through their work experiences, what they like, they dislike, their salary, and sometimes you have to notice like certain patterns. So, but I'll go on to the next point. So the discussion part is vital. There are many roles you can take, but I would say to be genuine and not to act too extreme. Because as mentioned in like previous segments, not everyone can be the leader. It actually looks really bad if 2 people are fighting to be the leader. Like I was a panelist and I saw 2 people fighting to be leaders. I would like not like both of them, which is like lose-lose situation. So you really have to like play by ear and see how it goes. If let's say you see someone like springs up and they're like, okay, so I'm gonna talk about my resumes. You like listen to them, you contribute to the discussion. They just want to just be like genuine, but just be like as useful as possible. Whether a leader, someone that contributes their own points, someone that points out the things that no one else really noticed, things like that. All of these roles are important. It's like you really just have to be genuine and do the best as you can. So cooperation is key, right? So next is to be clear, concise, and honest about telling others about what you gathered or your thoughts about the discussion. Don't overshadow or trample over other people just to make yourself look good. What I mean by like being clear, concise, and honest, like for example, for my resume, at first it was actually selected for one of the roles. But then later on, as I was standing there discussing, I looked at the resume and I realized that they disliked something that was literally part of the job description, and it was something that I overlooked. So I was extremely honest. As much as it pained me that this resume had to just be taken out like that, I was like, guys, actually this resume, I don't think they're suitable for this job. I think actually like this person's one is more suitable for the job. So you really have to be like aware of like so many different things, like how you interact with other people, then make sure no one's left out, the information in the resumes, and also I would say like pay attention to detail, because for example, the article is something that a lot of people overlook. I'm not sure because of their choice or because they did not read it on time. But for example, the articles covered sort of like real world topics, which is where national awareness kind of comes into play. Like for example, in Malaysia, brain drain is a huge issue where like young people are like moving to other countries to get more job opportunities and things like that. And if let's say you did not read the article, you will not notice patterns like this in the resume. Like for example, oh, you can see like the resume and then you see, oh, banyak je job experience, but then you notice, oh, they hop jobs quite a lot, or like, oh, they're not really like contributing to the country a lot. There's things like this that the article are supposed to kind of like prod you into the right direction to notice these things, right? And last is to, of course, when the final decisions and presentations, is to present your final decisions with confidence and be sure to bring up any relevant points. All of your points are important, so please do not just like, oh, I don't think my points are important, I don't think I should mention it. Like, you should mention it. If let's say someone else mentioned it, say that you agree with it, add more to it, things like that. Okay. All right. Next slide. So okay, so this is okay, how to do this? Alright, so on the Yayasan Kasana website, they say that for stage 3 this year, they will use the e-tray assessment. But the thing is, I can say cannot guarantee 100% what will like be tested for you guys. So be aware of both the case study and the e-tray. But I will say they're kind of similar but kind of different. So I will talk about the e-tray. So the e-tray assessment was something that was in the past. If you read old blogs from like 2017, this e-tray was tested last time, and it seems that they've introduced it again, but can't be too sure. It was in the slides. I was also in the site last year. We didn't get it. So so next What is it? So E-Tray is a simulated computer-based exercise based on a fictional work/business scenario. So quite similar to the case study in a particular job role. Okay, so for like when going through the blocks, this is usually like a digital assessment, like it's on a computer. They like give you a manager, like let's say like a managerial job, and so you have to go through things like background information. So for example, like the case studies article, they'll give it to you in terms of background information, and then email response. So from what I gathered, the email response could be like multiple choice or it could be a written email response. So it could be things pertaining to things like work, So any like work scenarios that you're supposed to deduce the answer of based on the information that you're given, you're supposed to answer it in this assessment. So it is kind of similar to case studies. I would say the same principles still kind of apply. But of course, be flexible with any changes that occur. If let's say it's a case study, then okay, be ready to like discuss with a group of people. But if it's this E-Tray assessment, then be ready to kind of like put yourself into the shoes of a managerial job. Okay. So next slide. Okay, so now in general, what are panelists actually looking for? So panelists are honestly looking for these things in all stages, but I would say especially in case studies. For example, things like I mentioned just now, like soft skills, how you cooperate and talk with other people. Analytical skills, like how you go through the material, like someone who's like very schema will just like read the material very detailed. But actually, for a situation like the Kazana, you have to skim through that material. You have to look for the main points and skim through it as fast as possible. You have to get like the patterns and all of that kind of stuff. Next would be good work ethic. So of course, like potential scholars need to the scholars that they are trying to recruit need to have a good work ethic. Do they like the moment dapat find tu terus pending? So they're not looking for people like that. Okay. And last would be, of course, leadership skills. So, like scholarship bodies will try and look for people who are like potential like future leaders. So, it is like, if possible, if you can get like a leadership role in a case study, try and push yourself to do it, like lead the conversation, ask around for everyone else's opinions. This is something that's like very highly valued. Okay. So next slide, we go into general tips and advice, and I'll pass it back to Victor.
Alright, thank you. Alright, so I'll speed run this a bit because we are cutting a bit short on time. So let's start with keep your cool, right? This is easier said than done because you're under time constraint. Take 2 to 5 minutes to plan your time, blah, 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 right? So what does this mean? Keep your things concise, right? So you have to plan out what you want to do properly, and keeping cool will definitely help you a lot, right? So don't need to stress about things happening. Obviously, you're trying to get the scholarship, but also take it as an experience, and just note that even if you don't get it, for example, this scholarship, you think you did pretty average during the case study, take the knowledge and use it and improve for the next one that you are invited to, right? Analyze your surrounding and see what resources you have available, right? So this would mean if look around you and think what things around you can help solve the problem that is at hand. Sometimes it can help, it really depends on where you are and what the person needs. Right, next slide please. Alright, make your presentation easy to understand, right? So as a team, when you guys are coming up with a presentation on how to solve the issue, don't go with elaborate slides that need to take a long time to load or whatever, right? That's unnecessary. Make it, again, easy to understand. Make sure that your interviewers understand the point that you're trying to get across. And it also makes it easier for them to ask you back questions and generally a better understanding of things, right? This also ties back to my point earlier about asking questions, right? So through this, when you ask questions, your things just become a little easier to understand. And always ask for opinions, right? And I said earlier, sometimes unintentionally, right? Because the heat of the moment, you leave somebody out, right? But that's where you should take a mental notice, right? And ask somebody for their opinion. Yeah. Okay, next slide, and I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, so the rest actually, I believe I mentioned something, or we mentioned something similar to these tips and advices. It's just that we want to emphasize it again. So allow there to be room for disagreements. don't just make it like a one-way communication thing. Like when someone gives you an opinion, you must also disagree with. You need to make the discussion interesting. Like the panelists can't just sit there and listen to one-way conversation all the way. They'll be bored. Also, they need some content, right? So make the discussion interesting. Challenge the idea of your other group mates if you disagree with the idea, and make it a two-way discussion. Otherwise, panelists may think that like if you just say yes to everything, like you agree, and you not just like yes a good idea, yes a good idea, following other people's idea. Sometimes panelists may think that you don't really have a personality yourself, which is a big no. Yeah, it's a red flag. So next slide. Okay, so pay attention to time limit and allow others to cross-check your work. Like if you have any ideas, ask opinions from others as well, and so on. Yeah, something like that. And wait, oh yeah, that reminds me of something. Can we go back to my previous slide, Frank Garrett? I'll take a bit of time from this. The last slide. Again, one more. Go back. Okay, this one. Okay, so I just want to emphasize on the attire again, even though this is not really what I was presenting. So, okay, you can see the one in the middle. Okay, it's me. Guess who's the one around? Does the one at the side seem familiar to you? No? It is the person from the mock interview there just now. Wait, no, mine actually, those are like my groomsmen, This is the attire we're wearing. This is how formal you'll be wearing for the bank interview. So everyone will be wearing blazers and so on, and also tie. And this pretty much works for the Yasan Kazana stage 3 interview as well, whenever you have to do face-to-face interview. Yeah, okay. So next on, I will pass it to Ezrin for the last slides.
Okay. Alright, so I think I've already touched on this a little bit just now, but just some final best practices you should do. Number one, prompt people who are quiet, because it not only helps other people, but it also shows good character of yourself, that you're observant and you care for other people. And of course, thank your teammates and your team supervisor as you leave. I know this is called scholarship tips 101, but honestly, I would say this is just like being a decent person 101. Like just do things that would be nice for other people, thanking them, prompting them, things that you just should do. If you think it's right to do, then do it. Okay. Now the last slide. This was touched on just now, but just be yourself. Because truthfully, no one knows what sponsors are looking for. Because maybe they're looking for a leader or they're looking for someone who can contribute to good ideas or give great opinions. But honestly, just be respectful and be the best version of yourself. Like, truthfully here, like, get this. If you want this scholarship, get it by being yourself. Don't pull some kind of facade and then you get the scholarship and then you get imposter syndrome. Like, do it by being your true self. Be nice and genuine, and if you like deserve the scholarship, you will get it. Okay, that's all from us. Thank you.
So this will be a joint Q&A session. Alright. Okay, so this is a case study question. Can we volunteer ourselves as the timekeeper to stand up, or will the panelists record the time? Generally, no one has to be the timekeeper. I don't think that will add any plus points for yourself. The thing that will add plus points for yourself, I believe, is just contribute ideas, present yourself well, and give a good impression to the panelists, but not by being a timekeeper. Yeah, I don't think that will work. Oh yeah, the rest are self-explanatory. So next.
Alright, if you start with the question, if they try to help you, or just move on. In my experience, okay, I went for the Naga National interview as well, right? and I was stuck on one question. They asked about something they recently did in investments, right? And honestly, what stuck me was they asked me to answer in VM, and I kind of read all the news in English, and I, for some reason, forgot how to speak VM at that moment and couldn't translate. So I just honestly said I know the material, but I unable to translate at that point in time and asked if I could answer in English. Unfortunately, I think it may have reducted some points, but they're trying to help me out as much as they can. But I'm pretty sure they also have limits to what they can and cannot do. Yeah.
Okay, so what happens if everyone wants to be the leader in a group? This was mentioned like just now and also in like the previous segments. But this one, like you just have to be able to read the room. If you see that like everyone wants to be the leader, including yourself, you have to like sometimes you have to learn to like back down or and also sometimes things like this, I would say like it's a kind of like naturally people will just fall into their roles. Maybe there will be people that will like fight for the leadership, the being the leader in a group, but please don't be that person that's like fighting for it so badly. Like if you see that it's like getting like a banyak orang want to be the leader, just like step down and just contribute your ideas. That's much better. You can like try to diffuse it, but honestly, I would say that it kind of just like resolves itself in a way. Any input from the other two?
I think that the consensus of being a leader, it doesn't necessarily translate to you being able to speak more. Because in a case study, everyone is going to get a chance to speak. And whether you're very extroverted or introverted, whether you're a leader or a follower, it really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're gonna get your points through, and what matters is how you fit yourself into the group of people that you're assigned into, and that's also what the scholarship interviews are for. It's to test how well you can work in a team and how you adjust to different characteristics or different character archetypes that you might encounter in the future when you work.
For the next question, somebody asked, is there a way to practice case studies? Right. So I would say there's a few ways that you can go about this. One would probably be just Google anything, right? Google any of the case studies and just read up about them. If you actually want to practice, okay, so before the Yayasan Kazan interview, I actually joined a call with Shami. Yeah? No? Okay, Shami, what are you saying? The case study guy, right? Not the case study, the mock interview guy, right? The mock interview guy, we were from the same school, so we joined the call together and started going through random interview questions that could possibly be asked. So if you were to change that into a case study sense, I'm pretty sure that you may be able to like, get a few friends together, take turns coming up with like scenarios, and it's really just like a brainstorming session to prep yourself, I would say. Any input?
Also for case studies, right? As much as it's quite theoretical to some extent, but I think essentially case studies is more like your communication, where you need to present your soft skills, communication, your teamwork, and how you communicate your teammates in short. So rather than one thing is to prepare whatever random questions or topics that might come up, it is also very useful to just keep practicing like your public speaking. It tests a lot about your public speaking. And also, I just want to add on, like from the first question about timekeeping, right? Yeah, no one has to be a timekeeper, but do note that we have to keep track of it's best to keep track of the time ourselves as well. So if you see time is running out, then you can just remind your teammates. But you don't have to be like exclusively a timekeeper. Yeah, that's what I meant. Next question.
When panelists question after case study, do they ask a specific person? If not, how do you decide who to answer without talking? If I'm not mistaken, for me personally, for Yayasan Kazana, they just like ask at the end what is your final result and who have you employed? And one of the people in my group like volunteered to like just state as a matter of fact who we chose. But then when it came to like the elaboration and things like that, he would like pass it around so that each of us who gave in the resume could explain about the person, like, oh, they are really good at this skill and this skill and things like that. So that is for Kazana. They don't really, because it's quite like case study is quite like a group thing. They do assess individually, but it's quite like a group thing. So they don't really for case study like targets like one person and they like grill you to hell and back. Not really. It's more just like a group assessment. They just see how well you mesh together. That's for Kasana.
For Bank Negara, they might grill you a lot, so be prepared for that. And at first, they won't ask a specific person, it's up to you to answer, to any of the groupmates to answer. So usually the more proactive one will answer first, and then naturally it will be the more introverted individuals in the group, right? But if they don't answer, like back in my group, there were really quiet people that didn't really answer any questions. So the panelists will directly directed the question to that one quiet person. Even when they are just like me or Shami back then, we tried to answer, and then the panelist was like, no, I want him or her to answer. So like you have to be prepared for these kind of situations as well, and just prepare and answer for any case. But then of course you can always add on to whoever's answered, whatever your groupmate answered, you can always add on to that and feel free to give your opinions. Yeah.
I'll add on really quickly for Petronas, right? So it kind of answers the second part of the question where they ask, how do you not hog, right? Because Petronas, I feel during the case study session, it was more open, like anybody can answer. And this ties back to what Ezrin said about pretty much you will fall into your roles. They will ask specific questions, and among yourself, you probably know that, yeah, that person is better suited to answer that question, so you just pass it off to him, right? Or even if they don't volunteer, sometimes as a group, they're like, I think so on and so forth is best suited to answer, and they will answer. Yeah. From the introduction to discussion, can we speak with an informal casual tone since we're discussing with our peers and the panelists won't interfere, right? Alright, so I'll answer the second part of the question first. Yeah, the panelists won't interfere majority of the time. Occasionally they might say 5 minutes remaining, type of thing, right? But interfere in what you're talking about, no, unlikely. If you're talking about informal casual tone, I feel like throughout the entire session you just keep like a consistent tone, right? If you're going to be casual from the start. It doesn't have to be like super formal where you are calling your friends by sir, ma'am, miss, or whatever, right? That's not important. You can call them by your names, and a casual tone is probably best because you're simulating a real work-life scenario, I would say. And during those times, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be be serious with your all the time with your colleagues and stuff. So, in my opinion, it will be alright. Yeah, I'll pass that.
Wait, just to add on from that question from just now, it really like depends on the group, and I wouldn't say there is like a correct or like wrong way. Because like for example, my group for Yayasan Kazana was pretty casual. Like we're just like, hey, so what do you think about this? It was like really, we were all like glued to this whiteboard. One of us was like holding the whiteboard marker and like scrolling like crazy and things like we were just discussing quite casually. But of course, casual, not too casual. Don't use like vulgar language or don't be just too informal. Like we go bikin macam mana, like that kind of stuff. Don't do that. What if no one in the group is able to answer the question? Should I pass this to? You guys want to answer this question? What if no one in the group?
The irony of the
Okay,
question.
so I think this person didn't really pay attention to one of my slides just now. So okay, anyway, because like if no one is able to answer the question, then politely say like, sir, madam, I'm sorry that we don't really have a really good answer to your question. And then, but then it's like, if I can give my best guess or whatever, then you can state like, just try to give an opinion, but justified opinion whenever you can, even if you don't know the answer. But if it really comes to not knowing anything, just don't be quiet, but say that it's an answer that we have not think of yet. and then discuss with your group or something like that if you can. Yeah. How do we talk about solutions while avoiding criticizing government or the organizations?
Uh, this was a very big problem for me when I was applying for scholarships. Because I'm a very critical person and I'm very objective. I love my country, and if people aren't doing the right thing, I'm the kind of person to call it out publicly. But I love keeping up with politics. But I remember one thing my father kept pestering me about was he said during the scholarship interviews, no politics. That's how big of a problem it was. So whenever you're doing these interviews or throughout the whole application process, even when you're having, let's say during a break, you're having lunch with one of the interviewers, avoid talking about politics. If they bring it up, you just agree, okay, yeah, I see. But don't add on to what they say. In fact, don't mention any names, don't talk about any parties. If they ask you what is your opinion on the current political situation, at the time during our scholarship process, it was in the heat of PH against UMNO. So I remember being asked about that. And then I stated that politics, I had to lie. I stated that politics is not of my interest, right? I said that as a student, my only job is to study and work hard. Politics is something I will keep up about in the future. However, it's not to say that I don't keep up with politics. I'm aware of the current situations that are happening in our country. However, I choose not to pick a side because I feel like it can dampen my views on my life in the future. So that's how you should answer. Don't engage with any politics.
That's right. If I could add on to what Harry said just now, right? So about the government thing, so I'll tell the experience of one of my friends that went for the GP interview. He was from a military school, and one of the questions he was asked was, why do you not want to continue on in the military? And sometimes being overly honest is not the best way because he just said military corrupt, right? So try to bend your situation. Like Harry said, you have to lie. Obviously, don't lie to an extent where again, well, as I said, you get imposter syndrome, right? But try to navigate your way around things in a polite manner.
So next question. Since you guys mentioned a lot, what archetypes slash roles are common in these group sessions? Example, other than the leader, the fat guy, I don't know, etc. To be honest, I don't really know because when we talk about roles that people occupy, I think it just boils down to them being themselves and how they work around in a group. Yes, someone can be a leader, the one who initiates conversations, the one who brings up topics, and there can be someone who's like the know-it-all, the fat guy. But I think that it really differs on what type of people you meet. So it's really unfair for me to say that you will always meet these types of people in a case study, especially because I think that's what you're concerned about. Because, for example, during my case study in Petronas, there weren't really anyone who was a leader, and everyone was kind of ambivalent. I mean, we brought upon our points when we needed to, but no one was actively leading or bossing around other people. No one was the fat guy. I don't know if it was because we what don't know je, tapi we we legit just did our best in answering and carrying out the case study.
Okay, so my take on this question is based on my case study in Bangalore. My case study was about it's about crops lah. So the country wants to produce this crop. So if there's drought happening, what happens to the crops? How do you want to make profit? Then based on that profit, what do you want to do with the money and so on? So so the case study was divided into two sections. the one group will likely to manage the funds, which is related to accounting. How do you want to get the percentage of the profit? How much model you want to use? And then from the other side of the thing is what you want to do with that money. For example, charity service. Yeah, community service is what you want to do to like untuk bangunkan sektor these crops lah. So talking about roles, you don't just need to be leaders and macam fat guy. You need to like give ideas tau. This is another role lah, which means that other than being leader, other than giving facts, you need to like give ideas to that particular group, because to me it's more about brainstorming together lah. So if you are not a leader, if you don't have anything to bring up to the table, so macam you have nothing lah, faham tak? So just participate in that case study is just by giving ideas, like initiate people to give their ideas also. So in groups ni, your main role is to get the group a solution, not to be a team member that you want to highlight yourself only. Because case study is basically assessed on your groups tau. They will be comparing your groups to other groups, faham tak? So you need to be someone that is willing to give something to your group so that they can produce a solution. Because from my experience, my case study was a bit macam it was that lah, because the connection between the two sides, the financial side and the idea side, there was no interaction now. So what my assessor told me that you guys didn't have a leader to like connect between the dots, because our financial side didn't calculate it well, so there's some wrong in calculations lah. So it will like affect our profit punya estimation. So they asked me, how do you want to carry out your idea that the charity service is dah brainstorm. So if the budget side is not macam tak tally dengan apa yang the idea nak buat, so how? So bila the assessor tanya tu, we were like tak tahu macam nak jawab, because there was no leader like to connect the dots, faham tak? So I mean generally you need to be, like I said lah, be a team player, like get the main job done, not like to highlight yourself, faham tak? Just be sincere lah to help the group, not just to like, sometimes if you kalau you wanna like highlight yourself too much, it will like burden others and it will show that you are so arrogant and so selfish lah, I can say. So that's my take on roles lah in case like this. I hope you guys understand. Thank you.
If you're getting emotional, what kind of reminders or questions that you ask yourself to keep you grounded? Okay, I have like a personal one like about this, where it has happened to me before. Like for the how many people know this one? The KTJ's internal like scholarship. I was interviewed by 2 teachers, and I would say the interview was quite like personal. So they asked for my essay, they printed it, they highlighted it, everything, and I talked about like my family, and I talked about like my like elderly family, and so they asked and they pushed lah, and I did get like a little bit emotional, but at least for KTJ, the teachers were really nice, and if you ask yourself for like some time to collect yourself, it's fine. And honestly, it's like I think these panelists are human too. That if you are like being broached on a very sensitive subject, and let's say you do like shed a tear or two, it's fine. It does not like your interview is done from that moment on. Like I cried in the interview after I answered that question, and I still got it. So, but try to not be emotional. Of course, if it does happen, just let it happen. But if let's say it's like a really formal, professional interview, for me personally, I would say like this. For me personally, like I would like distract myself from thinking that train of thought. Like I try to think of the question that they ask and try. I just like schema mode on, and I just answer the question very factually. I just push the emotions to the side, answer the question, emotions later. I finish this interview first. So that's for me personally. So this next question, how to answer what are your career goals and how do I relate to the scholarship offered?
So, career goals, I think it would be best for you to answer with perspective to what scholarship you're currently applying in that stage. Because of course you would want to make the scholarship, the interviewer, believe that you are very committed and you're very passionate in getting the scholarship. So for me, lah, it would be best for you to imagine yourself as a future employee there and what you can give back and what you can contribute to the scholarship body after you have completed your studies and whatnot. And so how? Okay, to be honest, just imagine yourself as a future employee. I don't know what else to say. When I had lunch when we all went to Sasana Kicap for that camping. Yeah, for that thing where you have to go to Sasana Kicap for a few days. I had the opportunity to talk to the interviewers while we were eating our lunch, breakfast, and the main concern that these interviewers had why these scholarships are so important is because our country is facing a brain drain. All these geniuses that we have, all these stellar students getting straight A's with loads of A pluses, they don't want to work in Malaysia because they feel like their qualities aren't being appreciated here. So they end up working in countries like Singapore, they work in the UK, they move to Dubai. So that's the main concern. Why this is important is so that you can align your answer to their concern. Like I just said earlier, it's very important to align your answer with the sponsor that you are talking to. So I'll give an example for Bank Negara. When it comes to Bank Negara, you have to understand that your pay is nowhere near compared to a person working in Khazanah. When I graduate nanti, my pay will be a lot less than Christina, and that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. You have to make it clear. How I'll state this is that my career goal is to serve my country. My country has done many things for me. Um, for example, I feel like Malaysia, a lot of the things I've achieved in life would have not been possible if I were living in another country. Opportunities are extremely ripe in our country. Freedom is amazing. You can do anything you want and you'll always get the support you have. You have your teachers, you have your schools, you have the Ministry of Education. No matter what, they are always there to support you. So how that aligns with my goals is that I will say that in the future, I plan to serve my country. But what makes my answer different is that everyone can say I want to serve my country. In fact, during the Vanguard interview, everyone said I want to serve my country. What made my answer different was how I made it more personal. I stated that my father, he works in the public sector for the government. If you work under the public sector, you know that your pay is nowhere near as much as compared to if you work in the private sector. And that was a trade-off my father was willing to make, and he was conscious in making that trade-off. He said, I won't be able to send you to luxurious private schools, I won't be able to afford good cars, a large house, because I want to serve my country. He told me that when I was 10 years old. So I told my interviewers this. I said, you see, my father made the sacrifice since I was very young. And I was made clear that there are certain things you have to prioritize. My father's priority was to serve the country. And I grew up in that household that prioritizes serving the nation over earning a lot of money. So I would say that's what made my answer a lot different. You have to make it personal.
To add on also, I really agree with what Harif said just now to personalize your career goals during the interviews and so on. Like for me, right, Bank Negara also, because my career that I applied for was actuarial science, and that's where you have to study like the course that you are related to, like what is actuarial science, what does an actuary do, and how is actuarial science actually related to Bank Negara? Like, why do they offer this course? So that's where you have to study about Bank Negara and also actuarial science. So this also can apply for all other scholarships, like maybe for Kazana, right? It's like if you apply economics, what is it related to? Or maybe for UM, you're applying for engineering. How is it related to the scholarship that is going to be offered to you? So this is how you should personalize it. Like I want to contribute to the bank by adding your personalizing it. Like you know that bank is like to control policies, the money policies, right? It's not a bank itself, it's to control the banks in Malaysia. So what does an actuary do in the bank is also to perform calculations or to tally up with those private insurance companies in Malaysia so that they actually obey the policies that is made by bank negara. So that is one of the points which you can also show the interviewers that you have thorough understanding with the course that you want to do, and you're not just like I'm applying this just because I got good results and I don't even know what to do, something like that. So what I wanted to add is also something like oh yeah, something of personal experience also. Do not apply the scholarship. Do not apply for courses which doesn't relate to the scholarship body at all. Like from my personal experience for Yayasan Khazanah, right, YK, I applied for something really different from actuarial science, which is actually astrophysics. But then, how does that relate to Yayasan Khazanah actually? I actually got to stage 3, but then when during the interview CDI, when they asked like how can you contribute to the country or through Khazanah, it's actually a really tough question to answer. So this is where you actually think you actually dug a grave for yourself. So before you apply for any scholarship, make sure you apply to the course related and you know exactly how does the scholarship benefit you and how you can benefit the scholarship. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's it from us. I just wanted to send you guys our thanks for listening, and I'll pass it to Glenn.
Yeah, so right now it's almost 1:10, and hey, you take this one. Okay, so right now it's lunch break, so yeah, you can eat. But be back here by 2 because then we're gonna have the most interesting part of today's session, which is the debate. So yeah, go have some fun, eat, go pray, I don't know. Yeah. And for those online, you guys gonna watch a special video courtesy of Get There. Special video. Yeah, see you back at 2 guys. 2 p.m. sharp.
swimmer back in school. Swimming really taught me resilience, being very persistent in my training. I trained the swimming team for my boarding house. That was one of the most memorable points for me in KDJ. That was the first time I've ever felt like I was actually leading a team and coaching people, which actually felt quite fulfilling during my time in KDJ. What I miss most about KDJ, this feeling of being really close to your friends and the sense of camaraderie amongst the people that you're around. I felt that I've made some friends for life. My experience in Exeter, it was incredibly fun, but also very difficult. Fun in terms of I was in a new country, new friends, new people, new experiences in the UK uni. The difficult part was I'm by no means like the brightest student in the room. I felt that whole experience have taught me to just push through, because if you do the work, you will see the results at the end of the day.
A-levels is basically just an extension of your SPM knowledge. It can be either 2 years or 1.5 years. I took 4 subjects myself: chemistry, physics, maths, and also further maths. I already knew that I wanted to study engineering when I entered university. So I picked the subjects that were helpful to me. So I guess the pros and cons of doing A-levels is that it generally takes more time compared to other pre-university courses. The pros would be that it's generally accepted worldwide. I have friends who applied to US, UK, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, even Canada, and that already gives you a lot of really good options as to where you want to study for your tertiary education later on.
It's like a very interesting period now, because I guess after the UK left the EU and Brexit, previously a lot of regulation was decided in the EU level so that it's the same across all the EU countries. But now with like that independence that the UK has, they get to decide for themselves how they want the rules to look like for the UK. So they call it being like a rule taker to a rule maker, and so it's also a learning journey, and it's a very interesting time, I guess, to join them and to see this happening. I think anyone applying for jobs or scholarship, do your research and contact people on LinkedIn who work there, and try to find out like what the advice they would have. Try to get a feel of how it is to work in that organization. What's the working culture like? Is it a very hyper-competitive place, or is it a place that's very inclusive? That's very important.
I landed the graduate role with EY in Southampton. So I spent about 3 years in Southampton doing ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification with Kaplan. We did have help in terms of tuition teachers to coaches on the papers. The tutors in Kaplan were great. They were really good with what they did. They were all, if not most of them, have done the papers themselves before. One of the papers in the advanced level. When I did the paper, my reasoning and rationale came out great. I was very shocked to learn that I had gotten a prize for the strategy business management paper. The ICAW qualification has definitely helped me understand businesses better. Once you qualify and get the ICAW qualification, the options are also endless. You could go into corporate finance, you could go into risk and regulation, which is what I'm doing now. I think that was one of the main motivations for me to get the ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification. My time at EY, I first started off doing the graduate program with financial audit, and that's where I got the ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification. Once I qualified from EY Southampton, I was presented with the opportunity to move to the London office to join this team called Extended Assurance, focusing around financial services, risk and regulation. I thought it would be good to get involved within the financial services space, which is where I currently am, because London being the financial hub of Europe, what kept me within EY is the people. The people are great. Everyone's willing to lend a hand to support you if you've got questions, concerns, or even if you need someone to bounce ideas with. There's loads of opportunity to build your career. You'll get the experience of their entire industry through the clients that you interact with.
My name is Nia Katarina. I was from College Hasan Saad, but currently I'm in College Tunku Jaafar doing my A-level. Different scholarship has different requirements. For a merit-based scholarship, your SPM, your trial results may matter. For Bank Negara, they require at least 8 A's, no A minuses. It's not like if you get straight A plus, you definitely have like a higher chance of getting it. It's not like that at all. They look at a more holistic approach. They don't just look at your academics. There are also other factors that contribute as well. Bank Negara asks for results since Form 4. It differs according to the scholarship. Some scholarship would want to see how consistent you are from all these years. At the end of the day, you have to prioritize your academics first, but bear in mind that you can also shine in other areas.
I'm a SNSW scholarship receiver. When I was doing my case studies, the main structure I held on to was giving my solution, and then I mentioned about my reasoning on that solution. Then I said my potential drawbacks, and I reiterated my solution to actually cover up those drawbacks. So simple things like walking through your thought process, how you show that you thought about the question very deeply. Thinking outside of the box also matters. Although you have a very huge time constraint, you should still try to be creative with your ideas. You can even include statistics. One of the comments I got from my assessors was that they really love the fact that I used statistics because I was able to show how severe the problem was actually. So that's a little tip for you to look forward to when you go to case studies.
The first place I started my career was at Bank Negara. I worked there for 6 years. I started off as an insurance supervisor. Then I went into financial regulation. It was like a great foundation to start your career because you get a breadth of knowledge and you get to work on a bunch of different things that you can only do in a central bank. After 6 years, I decided I wanted a career break. I did my master's. I did this program called the Masters of Public Administration at the LSE. So it's like a 2-year program. I did the economic policy specialism, quite multidisciplinary as well. Like I got to do some things like political science, econometrics, development economics, where I'm at the moment in the Bank of England, working in financial regulation. I'm very comfortable with the work-life balance. I think the organizational culture is great. Happy where I am, and at least for the next few years, I'm going to be where I'm at. Hi, I'm Nisho. I'm from Subang, currently working at the Bank of England. After SPM, I got Bank Negara scholarship. They sent me for A-levels at KDJ. It was great because it just broadened my way of thinking and exposure to like people from all across the world that I'm still friends with. My A-levels, I did econs, accounting, mathematics, and chemistry. It was great to have like people from other universities coming over and talking about their universities to help you make that decision. The support you get is great in terms of like writing your personal statement to go into universities. I got UCL and economics, and honestly I loved it.
Attention all operators on countdown 1. We're going to start our go no go poll for today's flight. Raptor 1. Go. Raptor 2. Go. Stage 1. Go.
Good morning. On your screen is Starship as it awaits our first ever integrated flight test from Starbase Texas.
Flight directors go for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Ignition. 2. We have liftoff.
Flying up.
Starship vehicle, tower clear, we're into pitch over. Onboard view from Starship. What a sight! We're flying at twice the thrust of the Saturn V heading to space.
Execute. That's another engine.
I went to KDJ, I did O level, I did A level. I went to Exeter for uni, I did accounting and finance there. Every year, there's like sports competitions in KDJ. I'm a swimmer back in school. Swimming really taught me resilience, being very persistent in my training. I trained the swimming team for my boarding house. That was one of the most memorable points for me in KDJ. That was the first time I've ever felt like I was actually leading a team and coaching people, which actually felt quite fulfilling during my time in KDJ. What I miss most about KDJ, this feeling of being really close to your friends and the sense of camaraderie amongst the people that you're around. I felt that I've made some friends for life. My experience in Exeter, it was incredibly fun, but also very difficult. Fun in terms of I was in a new country, new friends, new people, new experiences in the UK uni. The difficult part was I'm by no means like the brightest student in the room. I felt that whole experience have taught me to just push through, because if you do the work, you will see the results at the end of the day.
A-levels is basically just an extension of your SPM knowledge. It can be either 2 years or 1.5 years. I took 4 subjects myself: chemistry, physics, maths, and also further maths. I already knew that I wanted to study engineering when I entered university. So I picked the subjects that were helpful to me. So I guess the pros and cons of doing A-levels is that it generally takes more time compared to other pre-university courses. The pros would be that it's generally accepted worldwide. I have friends who applied to US, UK, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, even Canada, and that already gives you a lot of really good options as to where you want to study for your tertiary education later on.
It's like a very interesting period now, because I guess after the UK left the EU and Brexit, previously a lot of regulation was decided in the EU level, so that it's the same across all the EU countries. But now with like that independence that the UK has, they get to decide for themselves how they want the rules to look like for the UK. So they call it being like a rule taker to a rule maker, and so it's also a learning journey, and it's a very interesting time, I guess, to join them and to see this happening. I think anyone applying for jobs or scholarship, do your research and contact people on LinkedIn who work there, and try to find out like what the advice they would have. Try to get a feel of how it is to work in that organization. What's the working culture like? Is it a very hyper-competitive place, or is it a place that's very inclusive? That's very important.
I landed the graduate role with EY in Southampton. So I spent about 3 years in Southampton doing ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification with Kaplan. You did have help in terms of tuition teachers to coaches on the papers. The tutors in Kaplan were great. They were really good with what they did. They were all, if not most of them, have done the papers themselves before. One of the papers in the advanced level. When I did the paper, my reasoning and rationale came out great. I was very shocked to learn that I had gotten a prize for the strategy business management paper. The ICAW qualification has definitely helped me understand businesses better. Once you qualify and get the ICAW qualification, the options are also endless. You could go into corporate finance, you could go into risk and regulation, which is what I'm doing now. I think that was one of the main motivations for me to get a ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification. My time at EY, I first started off doing the graduate program with financial audit, and that's where I got the ICAW, Chartered Accountant qualification. Once I qualified from EY Southampton, I was presented with the opportunity to move to the London office to join this team called Extended Assurance, focusing around financial services, risk and regulation. I thought it would be good to get involved within the financial services space, which is where I currently am, because London being the financial hub of Europe, what kept me within EY is the people. The people are great. Everyone's willing to lend a hand to support you if you've got questions, concerns, or even if you need someone to bounce ideas with. There's loads of opportunity to build your career. You'll get the experience of their entire industry through the clients that you interact with.
My name is Nia Katarina. I was from College Hasan Saad, but currently I'm in College Tunku Jaafar doing my A-level. Different scholarship has different requirements. For a merit-based scholarship, your SPM, your trial results may matter. For Bank Negara, they require at least 8 A's, no A minuses. It's not like if you get straight A+, you definitely have like a higher chance of getting it. It's not like that at all. They look at a more holistic approach. They don't just look at your academics. There are also other factors that contribute as well. Bank Negara asks for results since Form 4. It differs according to the scholarship. Some scholarship would want to see how consistent you are from all these years. At the end of the day, you have to prioritize your academics first, but bear in mind that you can also shine in other areas.
I'm a SNSW scholarship receiver. When I was doing my case studies, the main structure I held on to was giving my solution, and then I mentioned about my reasoning on that solution. Then I said my potential drawbacks, and I reiterated my solution to actually cover up those drawbacks. So simple things like walking through your thought process, how you show that you thought about the question very deeply. Thinking outside of the box also matters. Although you have a very huge time constraint, you should still try to be creative with your ideas. You can even include statistics. One of the comments I got from my assessors was that they really loved the fact that I used statistics because I was able to show how severe the problem was actually. So that's a little tip for you to look forward to when you go to case studies.
The first place I started my career was at Bank Negara. I worked there for 6 years. I started off as an insurance supervisor, then I went into financial regulation. It was like a great foundation to start your career because you get a breadth of knowledge and you get to work on a bunch of different things that you can only do in a central bank. After 6 years, I decided I wanted a career break. I did my master's. I did this program called the Masters of Public Administration at the LSE. So it's like a 2-year program. I did the economic policy specialism, quite multidisciplinary as well. Like I got to do some things like political science, econometrics, development economics, where I'm at the moment in the Bank of England, working in financial regulation. I'm very comfortable with the work-life balance. I think the organizational culture is great. Happy where I am, and I, at least for the next few years, I'm going to be where I'm at. Hi, I'm Nisho. I'm from Subang, currently working at the Bank of England. After SPM, I got Bank Negara scholarship. They sent me for A-levels at KDJ. It was great because it just broadened my way of thinking and exposure to like people from all across the world that I'm still friends with. My A-levels, I did econs, accounting, mathematics, and chemistry. It was great to have like people from other universities coming over and talking about their universities to help you make that decision. The support you get is great in terms of like writing your personal statement to go into universities. I got UCL and economics, and honestly I loved it.
Attention all operators on countdown 1. We're going to start our go no go poll for today's flight. Raptor 1, go. Raptor 2, go. Stage 1, go.
You guys don't have to be nice, let's be honest. So yeah, right after lunch, we're gonna have quite an interactive session. It's actually my favorite session, except for my own. So I would like to welcome Arvina and Wardina for the debate session of the day.
Next slide lagi gila. This is professional.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Wardina, and beside me it's Arvina. So we are going to talk to you about how debate style interview works. So I'll pass the mic first to Arvina.
So just for an introduction, I am a Shell scholar and Wardina is a YK scholar. So right now we're just going to go through the debate section about it. Just to be clear, there are only two interviews as far as we are going to be telling you about that follow a more debate style sort of presentation. So just to be clear, even if you guys, there are amongst you who are already debaters, you still need to listen because it's not the exact same as how a normal debate works. It's not that technical, it's not as structured. I would say like it's not the exact same British parliamentary or Asian parliamentary type of debate. So without further ado, okay, so I'll be presenting to you about the JPA style debate. So first of all, the most important thing which you have to know is that JPA is a debate. So it's in Bahasa Malaysia, which means all of you need to practice your Bahasa Malaysia, Bahasa Melayu speaking skill. Because the way that it works is that it's going to be, there's a flow which I'm going to be explaining to you, and it's in Malay. So, okay, I think there's a bit of some technical issues. Okay, but basically, the structure of the GPS debate, there are 5 different steps which I listed down for you, but this is how it works. So firstly, what's going to happen is that you will be divided into groups of 6. So you will be in the center with all of the other JPA candidates. You'll be divided into groups of 6. So you'll be given a motion, and the thing about JPA type of debate is that the type of motion they give is sort of policy related or like about the government, about the kerajaan, and we'll be showing you some sample motions later, and then after we get our tailored debaters to talk to us more about how to give a good debate, how to give a good speech, we'll be having an interactive session so you guys can sort of see how the motions work. Okay, so the third step would be you will have 2 different teams, the Kerajaan and Pembangkang. Basically, in English, you would be government and the opposition side. But the difference between this type of debate and a normal debate is that usually in a normal debate, you have 3 on the Kerajaan bench, 3 on the Pembangkang bench. But for JPA debate style, it's completely up to you. You can follow a group of 3-3, you can do 4-2. It's completely up to you and how the group, all 6 of you decide is the best possible way for you to do it. So I would recommend for you to follow the basic 3-3 rule, but it's completely up to you based on the motion and based on what you think is most suitable. Because at the end of the day, even though you will be split into 2 different teams, Kerajaan and Pembangkang, it's still, you guys will still in a way be working together among all 6 of you. So that's important to take note of. So you'll be given 10 to 15 minutes to prepare. And I hope you all use this time to prepare by discussing with your teammates, showing that you can work together instead of just, I mean, I'm sure you've already heard about how when you're working in a team, it's not all about bossing people around or like standing up and doing this. you also have to know how to compromise, how to listen to other people, how to work together, because there will be assessors going around and looking around you guys and seeing how you guys work together. So that's also really important for you to take note of. Okay, and then the most important part, we'll have 20 minutes for the entire debate. So there's no specific time bound per person. What this means is that there's no minimum or maximum which one person can speak for. However, I would recommend that you prepare awal-awal, like you discuss with your members, your fellow teammates, like how long you think you should take, because remember you only have 20 minutes. So don't speak too much, try not to speak too little as well, because you want to fully utilize the time that you have and also give time for other people to present juga. So, okay, this thing which is really important is that the debate can go in whatever direction your team prefers, which means that in a normal debate, usually they have the government opposition. But in this debate, like I said, it's completely up to you. It can be all kerajaan cakap dulu, all of the members of the kerajaan's bench will debate first, and then only the pembangkang, or you can alternate like how it usually is in a normal debate. Again, completely up to you. I hope you guys discuss betul-betul with your teammates and see what's more suitable and what would help create the best debate, I would say. Okay, so that's basically how the entire debate works. But let's just say like after you give your speech and then you're like, oh my god, like I could have said this but I didn't, and now I feel like I was outshined by all of my other friends, all of my other teammates, and I just didn't do well enough. But I have more things I want to say. That's completely fine, because after the debate is over, you will have extra time for you to add additional input or to say additional things which you would have wanted to add. So don't worry, because they are quite flexible, I would say, and it caters towards you guys and what you guys want to say. So it's really not that stressful. And I hope if you guys are not debaters or if you are shy, you would take this opportunity to stand out and to also to speak up and understand that it's really not that intimidating, because your teammates, I'm sure they will make it a lot easier for you. So just work together and also speak up. So those are the tips which I can give for this JPA debate. So next, moving on to example of motions. Okay, so these are just a couple of motions of how the debate for JPA is like. For example, PT3 patut dimansuhkan, so kerajaan dan pembangkang, and then PDPR menyediakan pelajar ke alam universiti. There's also pengangkutan awam versus kenderaan persendirian. So these are just very general motions. So I hope you guys like sort of look and get the idea of how JPA motion sort of works, because yeah, that's basically how it's like. So this is for JPA. Now moving on to PNB, I'll pass the mic to Wardina.
Thank you, Harbina. So let's move on to how PNB debate works. So just a disclaimer before that. So for PNB, it's more like a case study, but it has the gist of debate to it. So that's why it's being put under this section. So next slide, please. So for PNB interview debate style, the thing is, the moment you step into the room of the PNB interview, you will already be assigned to your respective groups. Most probably, for your session, there will be 10 groups, of which will consist of 5 to 6 members. So what will happen is that there will be 2 sessions for the case study or the debate session, which is the first motion and the second motion. So what is going to happen is that in your group of 5 or 6 people, for the first motion, only 2 or 3 people are going to present. So you decide among yourself who do you want to send first to present the case. And what about the other 3 people is that you will help the other 2 who is going to present by searching statistics or information for them. So basically you are going to work as a team, and this is going to be a team case study or a debate session. So what will happen next is that you will be given around 30 minutes or 15 minutes to find information on your motion, and worry not, because you can use your devices to actually search up for anything the motion is about. So it's not really about your general knowledge, or it's not, as long as you have your devices with you and you know how to find information on the internet, basically just by googling it, you'll be fine, seriously. So when the first 2 who is going to present their case, the other group mates, I would I would advise you to pay close attention to them, because while they are presenting, the other panels not only will going to be evaluate them, but as well they will be evaluating you as well as an audience. So what is your attitude during that? They will take note of that too. So, what's going to happen next is that they're going to give you questions regarding your presentation. For example, if you're going to give a presentation on how to reduce food waste, for example, so they are going to ask you what country must have done that, what is the success rate or things like that, so that they want you to know that you have to do an in-depth research on that before presenting and want to know how well prepared you are. So what is the debate gist of it actually? It is when you have to defend your case, because they might ask you questions about things that aren't very aligned with your presentation, or they might attack your case as well. So you have to be firm with your stance, and that is how it is under the debate session. So the same thing will happen to the other three who hasn't present their case yet. So next slide please. So these are the examples of the motion that has been given. First, how to reduce food waste. Second, how to encourage low-income people to join the 3D sector. And lastly, how to boost agriculture sector in Malaysia. So that is how PNB case study / debate works. Next slide, please. So moving on, let me share you a few debate style interview tips with you. So first thing first, I need you to understand that throughout any interview session that you go to, you are going to be evaluated the moment you step into the room, how you greet the panels, and how you show your smile, how you interact with other people. That's how it goes. It's not just about what you present to them in terms of your case and everything, but how you present yourself as a person as well. So what I will give you as a tip first is during the discussion. First thing first is to give an opinion and set a goal, because this is a debate thing, which means you have, as a team, you have to have a clear goal of what you want to achieve as a team. Make sure that everyone's understanding is aligned. And you know that when you're going to do a debate, yes, you have the overall theme and what you want to fight for. But at the end, everyone is going to work on their own point, which eventually might cause some things not to be aligned with one another. So that goes to my second point, which is clarify ideas with your teammate. Make sure there's nothing that bercanggah ataupun benda yang sama. We want to avoid repetition so that it shows that your team have a very good teamwork. And lastly, lead or initiate. The best thing, for Khazanah, for example, you have a case study, you can actually grab a marker to lead and initiate the things. So how do you do it for the PND and JPA thing is that maybe, for example, for JPA, we actually set in like 5 kerusi, so apa yang berlaku ialah apa kami buat waktu itu ialah because we were facing the panel tau, so macam takkan kita nak bincang, wait kau rasa apa, macam pelik lah kan. So what we did was that we brought the kerusi together, someone initiated, oh what about we sit in a circle, so that's one thing to go around it. You can do a lot of things as kan, kalian cuba untuk initiate all the opinions of everyone's present. So that is how I would give tips and advice for the debate style interview, for the discussion part.
Thank you, Wardina. I hope you guys actually betul-betul listen to the tips, because what she said is right. Initiation is really, really important. So that's just for some tips. Now the structure of your speech. I'm not going to go into such details on that because our good friends from Taylor's, Victor and Christina, are going to come up and give more about the structure of each speaker and what you should be doing. But the general structure of the debate, let's say it's following the 3-3 format, right? 3 on the Kerajaan side, 3 on the Pembangkang side. So the first speaker, as usual, you have to start with a definition, give a status quo. So if you don't know what status quo means, it's basically talking about what's happening in the the issue semasa, all of your current issues, your dewasa inilah, all of your karangan peribahasa stuff that you used to use, is basically that, all of the issues semasa basically. So just talk about some current issues that relate to the motion that you are given and define the motion. Because when as a first speaker, when you do that, it lets your assessors think, oh wow, they know what they're talking about, they have good teamwork, they are prepared, they came prepared. And that's important because you are the first speaker, you're opening the debate for other people to see and to follow up from it. So that's really important. And then of course present your arguments and state your team's stance. So your team's stance basically means what you want to achieve. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because they will come up and they will tell you more about it. But basically just give your arguments. Important, remember, first speaker, talk about your current issues, your issues semasa, and just give your arguments. Second speaker, what you do is you rebut. You argue balik dengan apa diorang cakap. If they say A, you say, okay, but B is better because, that's how you rebut, that's how you argue. So you rebut what they say, and then you present new arguments. So that's how second speaker works. Third speaker, similar to second speaker in terms you still have to rebut. You say, oh, if they say B, no, C is better because, and then you elaborate. So you still have to rebut. But the thing about your third speaker is that it's very important that you have a conclusion. You summarize the entire case of your bench, whether you are government, whether you're opposition. You summarize the case, you summarize the argument, and you come up with a conclusion as to why your team wins the debate. Like if you want to make it a competition kind of thing, like this is why we are the better side, something like that. So make sure you have good points, you have good summaries, because if the first speaker is the one to open up the case so the assessors can follow up, the third speaker is the one that closes the case for your team. So it's very important also. Essentially, all three speakers are important, but these are just the main things that you should do as for each speaker role. So that's all that we're going to tell you about debate because because the tailored debaters are going to come up. So without further ado, let's invite Victor and Christina to talk about more in detail about the debate.
Alright, thank you, Fabiana and Warren. Alright, so, hi guys, hi again. So, I talked to you guys earlier, so let me give an introduction to Christina instead. So, Christina is the president of Taylor's Debaters for this current term, and fun fact guys, she was the 7th best overall speaker in an Asian, competition comprising of teams from all across Asia, right? So, alright, so before we start, can I have a show of hands? How many of you guys have prior knowledge to debating? Like, alright, so one, okay, quite a lot of hands. Raise them up, guys, raise them up higher. Alright. So I would say the large majority of you guys do not have prior experience, but that's alright, because right now we have, next slide please, a change of scenery and debate 101. Alright, so we'll be starting off today with a couple things on our agenda, which would be, alright, first we'll be talking about the motion types that you will generally encounter during a debate, tell you guys about argumentation and refutation, talk about some of the speaker roles, and last but not least, we'll have that interactive debate practice type of thing that Harvina and Warren previously mentioned. So let's start off with motion types. So first of all, what is a motion? Oh, sorry. Alright, so what is a motion? A motion is a statement regarding an issue that will be discussed in the round, okay, or in the debate session, right? Problems that require a solution, whether certain actions as law should be allowed, and the general themes are like social justice, politics, religion, philosophy, right? So this pretty much means it will just be like a statement. For example, this house believes that school uniform should not be required in school, right? So then there's going to be a government opposition, pretty straightforward from then on and then forth. But this is where motions start to get a bit complicated. First being, there will be something called policy debate. So a policy debate argue whether a law should be enacted. For example, government will have to provide a mechanism. Right? Mechanism is pretty much how it will be implemented and illustrate how the world would look like with and without the law. And opposition will provide your own mechanism on a better solution, you could say, rather continuing using current laws. An example of this would be this house would ban smoking, right? So as the government, you would identify like how can we ban smoking. For example, it could be through education in school, or it could be through the banning of sales of cigarettes in 7-Eleven and stuff like that, right? And I don't think this is the last one I should say for these purposes. Okay, so I'll carry on to active debate. So an active debate requires you to put yourself in the shoes of an individual, right? So debate in the perspective of the person prioritize their interests over other parties. For example, this house as a parent would send their daughter to an all-girls school, right? So in this debate, you must talk about as a parent what is best, right? So as a parent, what would you want? You would want your child to have a good education, a good social life, etc., 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 mostly to be happy, right? So as a parent, why is this decision important for the betterment of your daughter, right? And last but not least will be a value judgment debate. So this takes into consideration all aspects and parties involved. For example, this house believes that social media platforms do more harm than good, right? So why is it a value judgment? Because there's no definite right or wrong answer to this, right? It's going to be really up to the interpretation of the government and opposition bench on how, pretty much like, social media good because you can talk to people from across the world, blah blah blah, interact, get news, everything. But it's bad because of bullying, etc., etc., etc. Right? But this is one thing that I would like to point out a bit earlier right now, is that you really need to find clashes in the debate, right? For example, when you're speaking of government and opposition, you do not want to completely, how do I say, live in your own world, like only yours is correct, right? So sometimes you will have to admit the flaws in your side, admit how, okay, yeah, opposition has a point there. That's where the clashes come. The clashes come when you try to mitigate that problem, to sort of overcome that problem, right? So you overcome it by saying, let's just talk about the social media platform, right? The opposition will come up and say, people get cyberbullied all the time. What is a mitigation to that? A mitigation could be, there's been a lack of formal education about the harms of social media in current world. So how do you overcome this? The government can implement, let's just say, you can implement the harms of, how to prevent cyberbullying in their freaking sejarah history book or something, right? And yeah, so then carry forward. Next slide, please. We have argumentation, and I'll pass it off to Christina.
Okay. So talking about argumentation, hopefully my voice is clear. Whenever you guys start to debate or to really think through about a topic, you realize about the first question you probably ask yourself, oh my god, where in the world do I start? And how do I think this through so that all of my content isn't just statements and that everything that I'm talking about are complete and thorough so that when someone asks me a question, even if I don't know, I at least have some form of material to respond. So that's the first thing that we're going to talk about, framing. Especially when it comes to later, Victor will be talking about the speaker roles. There's a big importance, and I think people usually go around and forget about the importance of framing. Framing looks like, what does my world look like? Why is that important for me to care about your world? First thing is that humans are very sentimental creatures. For example, if even in the previous presentation, I think like one of the presenters talked about how they really care about the country. Everyone talks about why they care about the country. Why would I practically care about you thinking about that? It moves and shifts because you give a personal touch to that story. So, framing looks like characterizing certain aspects of the society. For example, let's say the topic of the motion is talking about a parent from an underprivileged background wanting to
teach their child that they should have a negative aspect of life. So you would give them a backstory of what that world looks like. For example, let's say you're a mother. Not only are you working like multiple jobs, you're a therapist, you're a cook, you're a mother, you constantly practically have to be the driver, all these different jobs. You want at least in the interest of yourself as a mother, you want to be able to give your child a secure job. So that's an example, a very, very general example of what great big foot looks like. Right. Next, is it true? So throughout the whole presentation that we've had so far, you hear a lot of things about just like, yes, give facts, give statistics, give examples and ideas, but you cannot just give an idea, an example, a fact, without elaborating on one, why is that fact important, but two, and most importantly, why is that fact true? Because especially in debate, you can just lie. I lie all the time. If I'm like in a really bad position and I need to lie, you're gonna lie, right? So you have to tell me how is this true. For example, let's say a person who doesn't do homework will most likely lead themselves to panic or feel more anxiety. That's just a statement. But how do you make this true? You say, okay, if a person doesn't do their homework and keeps missing classes, one, they're not going to know how to do their homework. Two, over time, they're going to have more things that are due, and by the final day, everything is due. You don't know where to start, you don't know how to do your homework, and that's going to make you feel a sense of panic. So that's how you link everything to be true. Mutually exclusive or more likely. So that means that you would say, my benefits are mutually exclusive to my side. You, in your world, you cannot have that benefit. For example, like, let's say, I can make 20 bucks per hour, but he can't make money. My mutual exclusivity is that I can make money and he can't. Sorry, Victor. So yeah, that's an example. Next slide. Right, so importance. Right. So one thing about the importance of the argument is that you have to tell people, why should I care? You are a stranger to me. You telling me facts, you telling me your story doesn't necessarily mean I would care about you. It's like most likely most people don't, especially if it's a panel. They are there because they have some type of goal that they are reaching to. So you have to make yourself stand out. Right, spectrum of outcomes, explain impacts. Right, so spectrum of outcomes look like, let's say I do plan A. This is the spectrum of outcomes that could happen. When you're talking about the spectrum of outcomes, you have to basically talk about, okay, let's say I do mechanism A, this is my outcome. Meanwhile, the opposition is talking about mechanism B, and they can only have this outcome. And especially when you're talking about importance, this is your moment to really like differentiate yourself from everyone else. So for example, you can phrase this like, okay, group A talks about this, but they never really touch on this topic. And this is what I want to talk about today, and this is why this is so important and how I take over this debate. Right. Impact, I think that's quite self-explanatory. I've already explained that before that. Conclusion. Brief recap, mention burden. Yeah, that's very important. I think this can also go back to when you're starting your speech. There are a few questions that you probably want to answer throughout this debate. Whether that means that's like the interest of the actor, the interest of the government. You always want to remind people, what are you actually answering in this debate? Because sometimes when you're discussing to your group or you're directly even engaging in a debate to one another, sometimes you tend to get lost. So you or another person have to take that chance to realign everyone on what are you actually discussing about and what is actually the importance of the debate. And if someone is being irrelevant and wasting your time and wasting the time with the debate, you should call them out. Yeah. Refutation. So this is just a fancy word for responding back. untrue, mitigation. So all of these are pretty much self-explanatory, already been explained before. So untrue, you have to talk about, let's say a person gives you a mechanism and they say that this mechanism allows you to have this benefit. You have to tell them why this mechanism is untrue. Why is it flawed? Why the benefits that they are telling you just doesn't result? The consequences of their mechanism doesn't result in this benefit. That's how you start to rebuttal and really take down the majority of their points. So whenever someone is telling you, hey, I have an idea, if I want to solve problem A, this is the way to do it. So you shouldn't go ahead and attack the elaboration. You need to really look overall on what is the picture that they are trying to paint and break it down from there. Right, mitigation, minimizing the benefits, which I've already explained. Right, you always want to remember there's always going to be situations where there's always going to be a harm, right? Like how Victor said, sometimes you just have to admit that there will always be flaws. But what you want to do is to explain, regardless of what you do, these flaws will always exist in both worlds. Whatever you do, even if these flaws are as big as they are, our side would always and still override that flaw because of our benefits. Even if I'll explain that in the next slide, I think. Okay, so comparatives. Comparatives are extremely important. They are what make or break your points whenever you are explaining it to another person. Why? Because imagine yourself at a panel, you're already going through like a bunch of people, and sometimes one person can take up a lot of time. Even if it's 5 minutes, most likely, you imagine yourself, you have to listen to 3 people talking for 5 minutes straight, you're gonna lose attention. So comparatives are important because when you practically take off the burden of the panel to really compare your points with another person, you're already doing like 60% of the work for them. So comparatives look like, okay, this is what Marvel looks like against their world. Remember this sentence. This is extremely important when you're talking about your points. Like I'm telling you, if you don't remember this, you're gonna lose out on a lot of engagement. And even just like, especially when you're talking about stakeholders, whenever you're talking about your points, any points, even just like, I think they were talking about some topic about PT3. Who are the stakeholders in this motion or topic? Obviously, there are the teachers, there are the students, there are the parents even, because parents feel urgency when they have to see their child working like 10, 12 hours a day just to like get a good grade. So remember all these stakeholders when you're doing your comparatives, just so that when you break it down to the panels and judges that you're talking to, they don't have to think it for you. The consequence of when you don't do comparatives is that the panels who are listening to you are going to miss out on a lot of important points. Right. I think we can move on. Yeah, speaker roles. Victor.
Alright, thanks, kids. Alright, so let's move on to some of the speaker roles that we have. So what are speaker roles? It pretty much means what you should be doing in the order that you are speaking for your team, right? So we have 3 speakers. The first speaker would generally define the motion, preliminaries, and the policy if needed. So let's start with define the motion. What is defining the motion, right? So let's just say this house believes that youth shouldn't be allowed. What shouldn't be allowed?
Okay, so for first speakers, obviously you have to define emotion, give a definition. So for example, don't smoke. Yeah, shouldn't, let's say like the whole, remember how they did that law of just like, okay, people above the age of, I don't know, 27, yeah, 27, I don't know, should not smoke more, they are bad. So what you want to talk about is just like, why is this law flawed and why doesn't it achieve the goal of what that law is trying to achieve in the first place, people not smoking? Why is it flawed? Because there's always going to be good people trying to go against that. So that is your first most important argument. But also, a tip that I would like to give for first speakers is that whenever you are discussing with your team members, always think about what is the person after me going to talk next. So if you already know or have an intuition of what the other group is going to talk about, tell them. Refute it from the beginning so they don't have any points anymore. Like how you argue with your friends or your boyfriend or something, think about what's the next thing they're gonna say. This you already know. You get me?
Alright, thank you. Alright, so let's carry on with illustration and characterization. So this is pretty much what Kiss explained just now, where you have to kind of frame the world that this is happening in and characterize pretty much what's happening with the problem, why it's happening, and so on and so forth, right? So it's pretty self-explanatory. And last would be your first important argument, right? So as a team, you guys might come up with maybe 2-3 argumentations to talk about the entirety of your government op bench case, right? But your first speaker, honestly, should only maybe, okay, if possible, if the time permits, you can do 2 argumentations. But assuming the time does not permit, do 1 argumentation and explain it thoroughly, right? So I would say a safe way, when I was new to debating, one of the ways that my seniors taught me to build argumentations is the same way as you normally write a karangan. You know, they always think of the, what is it called, five whys, one husband? The why, what, who, where, when, and how, right? So those things, you just cover the bases and then you pretty much figure out a good argumentation structure, right? So next slide. Alright, so second speaker will be rebutting the previous speaker, so pretty much again say what was wrong with your speech, blah, 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 blah. And arguments for your side. Also, you will build argumentations, or extensions, to just continue adding on to build the case for your side and make sure that it is well justified and easy to understand. And lastly will be summarize everything and close all holes needed. So what we summarizing everything will be summarizing the whole of your case and explain the benefits that they will get because of, for example, said law being implemented, right? Okay, and last but not least, we have the third speaker. So the third speaker, in general debates, I'm not sure for scholarship reasons, for scholarships debates by the way, but for normal competitions, the third speaker are not allowed to bring up new points of argumentation. So what did they do instead? Instead, they first rebut, do some clarifications, and lastly, state the clashes that happen in the debate. I think I touched on clashes earlier on before, it's going to be the same thing here. And we'll be defending your case in layman terms, trash on the whole of opposition. So the whole of the other team, just trash on them guys, right? And say why your side is better. But also when you trash on it, be mindful that sometimes, again, you do have to concede. You need to show that not everything you're saying is false, and unless it really is, but most of the time it isn't, and you have to concede to the fact and try to mitigate that problem. And lastly, summarize and conclude the debate. Mostly, people do this by best case, worst case scenario. So what's the best case scenario of banning people under the age of 25 for smoking? Best case scenario, no cancer, right? What's the worst case scenario? Black market, or something like that. And to prove why the best case scenario is still always the cause of the worst case scenario, and it's a risk worth taking. Right, so, next slide please. Oh, well, sorry, I passed the phone back. Back to Christina for a second.
Yeah. So just to add on further, like what Victor said, the best case and worst case, the way that you also want to elaborate this would look like, okay, even at their best case, this is how we win. The way that you want to go around this is just like, at their best case, we win because, and even at our worst case, we still win over them because. Yeah, so that's a way for you to kind of wrap things up.
Alright, thank you kids. So, it's time for the interactive session, so I'd like to call back Arvina and Ward. And today's motion, so what we'll be doing is a little activity. Next slide please. Alright, this requires all of you guys to stand up, get ready, and move around. So If possible, please pack away your stuff. I'll say put it on the chair so nobody steps on it and stuff. And while you do that, I'll be explaining the game that we have today. Alright, I hear noise. People are getting excited, I assume. Alright, so is everybody, while everybody's packing their stuff, actually I'll give you guys a minute or two more. You guys don't have to carry your bags with you, you can just put it on the chair and move around and come back to the seat later, yeah?
Oh. Oh, okay.
Alright, so with everybody settled down, let me explain the game that we have. First, we'll be displaying a statement, and if you agree, you move to the right side of the hall, right? If you disagree, you move to the left side of the hall. Nobody is allowed in the center, alright? That's the case. Nobody is allowed to be neutral.
What about
Everybody
us?
clear? Everybody clear? Alright, nice.
Victor, what about us?
Base kids, move also, please. Adit, get off your iPad, come on. Alright, so I think I will start with the first statement that we have. It is okay to date your best friend's ex. Okay, agree on the right side, disagree on the left side.
Hey, yo!
Okay, we need some people to disagree and to agree also. So try to agree. Yeah, Masala Road. Yeah. Guys, no one's going to judge you, okay? This is just a debate.
Guys, just to reconfirm, that is disagree, huh? This is agree.
It is okay, it's not okay. It's okay, no one's stopping you. No one's gonna judge you guys.
I gave my answer.
Okay, alright guys. So we have everybody on the agree and disagree side. So I mean, it's kind of obvious which is the majority. But let's have people come out and say their opinions and why, alright? So let's start with the agree side. No, one.
What's your name and why do you agree?
Okay, so just for context, I do not have an accent. Maybe I might not be the best person to give advice. Yeah, my name is Jenshen and I'm from Kuantan. And yeah, so I'm gonna answer this question. So, is it okay to date your best friend's ex? And I think, just some caveats. Like, I think it is generally okay because I believe that it also depends on the context, the situation that you're facing, and if you actually have like a healthy relationship and with your friends and you are mature individuals, I think like by basis, it is okay to date your best friend's ex. It doesn't really matter that much. So I think if your best friend does not understand the situation and does not agree with you, then maybe you should change your best friend. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's my opinion. Thank you, guys.
All right, give a round of applause, everybody.
I can see everyone looking at the side eye. I like that. A round of applause. Thank you.
All right. So, did anybody from the disagree side want to give their opinion? Disagree side? All right, both of you guys can come down. Both of you can give it. Mau sekarang next lah. Hi, my name is Arif. I am from KL. So I don't agree that it's okay to date your best friend's ex, even though it's very contextual. There is a lot of context, like what. Sorry, I forgot anything. I'm so sorry. But like what he said just now. It's very contextual, but overall, I really don't think it's okay. One is your best friend, and it's like gonna get everything complicated. And if it's like a messy breakup, then you're kind of breaking a bond of trust between your best friend. And like in order to have a relationship, like whenever you go with your friend and then you bring your like whoever your partner, right, who used to be your best friend's friend, best friend's ex, then it's gonna get all awkward. And I just don't think that that is very healthy for you and your best friend's relationship or your relationship. And then well, regardless if like it's a mutual breakup or not, they still have a relationship. So the dynamic will be different. Yeah, that's all. Alright, thank you, Aaron. Alright, in my personal opinion, I believe that. Oh, okay, sorry. My name is Abdul Aflan and I am from BD. So my personal opinion about around this matter, which is it is okay to date your best friend's ex. Firstly, when you establish a connection with your best friend, I mean, as if you have a relationship with your best friend, it means that you put utmost trust with them. So anything bad happening in your life, of course, you will be telling them. So if ever you had an ex, of course, your best friend is going to know what happened between the both of you. Whether it is in good terms or is it in bad terms. Like what my fellow friend said just now, I think it's just awkward if I know if okay, as me, if I'm a boy, so of course I'm gonna have a relationship with a girl. So if my best friend had done something very bad before prior to having a relationship with me, so of course I'm gonna know everything since he's my best friend. So why should I like be stupid and ignore all the red flags and then be in a relationship with a person I know very much is a problematic person. So I mean, it's just like you're setting yourself into a trap if you're going to date your best friend's ex. And like what you said, you're just gonna put down all the trust that you had in your relationship because like with your best friend. Because like he told you everything, how do I say, like he confided in you, and he expects you to believe it everything. Then you just decided to date his ex, even though you know all the shortcomings coming from the other person. Unless the other party is, I don't know, having slight problems. I think this is also based on context, but in general, it's not okay to date your best friend's ex. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Now we have one more person who wants to refute balik what you said. So,
I want to ask you a question. Because he or she is my best friend's ex, I know all of her red flags, all of her wrongdoings. Okay, what if I am the right person for her? What if I can help her? And because everyone has flaws, right? Everyone has flaws. What if I know her flaws, and then my best friend is just not the type of guy to help her? What if I could help her? And benar lah kata, kalau jodoh, pasti akan jodoh.
That's a very good question. I would like to say that, okay, there's this one very popular, like, I can't say it's good, it's like a word where people are, excuse me for what I'm going to say, goes before who's. So, like you say, if you think that you are the right person, then I think it's up to you. Because if you think that your best friend is not the best man for him, I think it's the best if you told him prior to that instead of taking back his ex from him. I mean, like instead of like taking your ex, your best friend's ex, I mean it's better like you try to change him instead of like trying to show him that you are better than him by dating his ex and showing that you are a better man than him. So it's like betraying your friend. I think that is my opinion.
okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. Before they start fighting with each other, we're gonna move on to the next motion. But thank you guys so much. Okay, so next motion, again, agree over here, disagree over here. Motion is boarding schools have more cons than pros. So this side, if you think boarding schools have more cons, this side, if you think boarding schools have more pros.
Okay. Alright, guys, stop movement.
cannot be neutral, okay? You have to pick a side. Teacher, agree dengan the motion? Okay, I'm gonna give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, 1. Nice. Okay, so boarding schools have more cons than pros. Who wants to volunteer to give the reason as to why there are more cons?
So hi, just a bit of context. Like I'm from MCK, so I'm from a boarding school. So I personally think that I didn't have a great time at a boarding school, so this is very contextual and it can be a little biased. But tapi I think boarding schools have cons because you have to think about the economical side of it. Boarding schools have become a little elitist. Like in order to just go to the boarding school, you have to do a lot of prep. So you already have to have a bit of money beforehand. That's one. Second part is that I think that the mental health aspect of it is not necessarily like said. Like we don't really discuss that, or it's not really at the forefront. Like what is the impact of boarding schools towards like the students' attendance, like mental health wise, and personally, if you want to talk about the pros of boarding school, I can only think academic-wise and also like the preparation for academics. But if you want to talk about co-curricular activities and like volunteering activities, I would feel that normal schools have as much potential as boarding schools because in certain aspects, normal schools would have like more leniency and boarding schools, they have more rigidity that wouldn't allow you to per se, okay, let me give an example. Let's say you want to do CSR, right? You would have to go through so much barriers if you were to go in a boarding school. But if you were to go on like in a normal school, you can take your weekends or as like an after school activity and go to like soup kitchens and that kind of thing. Whereas in boarding schools, you have to plan it out, get the approval of your wardens or like whoever's in charge. And that could really put a damper on your abilities and really put you in a box. And the final part, before I conclude everything, is that I think that the way your mentality develops also like really depends on which boarding school that you go. But I feel like the mentality that you 13 to 17 is a really important time in your life, right? So it's really important who you surround yourself around with. If, per se, your batch in your boarding school is not a great influence to you, there's no real way to make a genuine connection with anyone outside of school without going through ECAs. So my point is that if you were to go in a boarding school, it can affect how you think in like your later days. And that could be very detrimental if you don't mingle around with the right people.
Okay, thank you, Arif. So Arif basically gave like a whole debate already. That's like the whole how a whole speech goes like. So that's good. But now we're going to try to keep it a bit shorter, a bit more concise, and also try using the things that you learned just now, like your comparisons or even A's, in order to give like a very short speech. Just like give 1 or 2 points if possible. Okay. Can we have one more person from the agree side? Someone else. Someone else back. Okay.
Okay, okay, I have two main points about why I think boarding schools have more cons. First of all, I think it's pretty obvious when you look at me, I'm obviously not Malay. So I'd say the first point is that there's not a lot of diversity. So obviously you're not going to find a lot of Chinese or Indians in boarding schools. And I think that really shows that perhaps there may be echo chambers in a boarding school. So there are usually like a certain type of ideal. And because there's not so much diversity, there's not so much contrasting opinions, it's hard to expose people to different things that are important in the world. And I guess the second thing is that I think the previous speaker mentioned it, which was that they are at a young age.
So if you put a lot of young kids together 24/7, depending on how well they are, like how well they're training their personal values, it's a bit risky. So I think there needs to be an element of more adults, more parents in these people's lives. So yeah.
Thank you, Kyrie. That was a very contextual and very informative type of way to give a speech. That's really good. So now can we have someone from...
Actually, Ramya, I think instead of having somebody come up with their argumentation, let's hear rebuttals from the opposition side, shall we?
Let's go, yeah.
Alright, so who wants to give their rebuttals? Any other collect boy want to lawan the collect boy? Alright, but anybody, you guys can give your rebuttals if you want, just raise your hand and come on down.
There are so many of you. Try lah. Come. Are you guys intimidated by the arguments? There are so many of you. Come on lah. I'm sure you have something to say. Okay.
I'd like to just say, I only have one rebuttal. Oh, my name. Sorry. My name is Christian. I think I said that earlier. I only actually have one rebuttal. There's no one is going to say. One of the speakers, the second speaker, mentioned that students should be surrounded in an environment where there are more adults. Well, in boarding schools, I would say that that is the case compared to in normal schools. Because in normal schools, you may not always have both parents at home at sometimes, or maybe just one, compared to a boarding school where you're surrounded by teachers and supervisors and such. And yeah, I feel that's why that's a contradictory point from the affirmative.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Do we have another rebuttal from this side?
Unless you guys agree that there's more gods.
So many people on this side, not that
the house pastor.
Let's do it too. I see a hand just now. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Okay, so for me, if I were to rebut the points coming from Kyrene, I would say that her points are coming from a very slippery slope logical fallacy, where she comes from a place where she's privileged enough to have extracurriculars and afford to pay for the extracurriculars. However, in boarding school, the main factor that helps the students there, especially why right now the MRSM they take into effect for B40 students and all, that they do have like Mafakat or PIBG, yeah, to help these students in their extracurriculars as opposed to normal schools, yeah, normal sekolah menengah school that. So in boarding school they do have that privilege, and there will be counselors and teachers who help these students to excel in their extracurriculars. And also, for example, in MRSM, they do have connections with other students because of the fact that they have like inter-MRSM competitions where they do build connections within one another in this huge 53 MRSM school communities, right? However, in like other boarding schools such as SBTs, they also have their own separate competitions where they have inter-SBP competition, so they can also build connections from that. So I do believe that boarding schools have more pros than cons, and that's where my point stands.
Thank you, Alani. So this is an example of a good debate. We have good arguments and rebuttals, so that's good. Moving on to our next motion. Pass it to Christina.
The maximum price of chicken should be increased.
Agree.
Alright, same thing guys. Agree, disagree.
Agree. Sorry.
You guys should move a bit lah. Try.
By the way, guys, just to let you know, most of the times in debates, right, you're not going to be given the privilege of choosing one side you want to be on. You will be forced onto a government, or you'll be forced on the opposition. So, even if you guys want to move, maybe you can try going over to that side you don't really agree with, and try just going from there. Let's see what you can come up with.
Yeah, and I also think it's helpful to know that most debaters, whenever they are debating a motion, sometimes have no clue what in the world they're talking about. So if you haven't read any articles, no statistics at all, just make some logical leaps on why this or this shouldn't be reality. Okay, so okay. Wow, that's a large majority. Okay, from this side, anyone wants to say something? This is the yeah. So why do you disagree with the increase of the maximum price of chicken? Actually, if you, anyone hands up want to try? If not, I'm gonna start choosing people. I'll give y'all 3 seconds. 3, 2.
No, I want to mess with her. But I've been on the other end of that many times.
Shut up, Victor. 1. Okay, so the guy in the back with the white and red striped shirt, we call it one.
Good round of applause, everybody.
Alright, my name is Sorry. I'm from KL. I disagree about the messages I think chicken should increase. So, my opinion, the price of the chicken should be decreased. Because we as humans, we need protein. So, the chicken has protein. So we need the protein. So the cheaper is better. So we can buy more chicken for our body to eat. To eat for our body.
Okay, thank you so much for that point. I think this is a good opportunity for everyone to start using the things that they learn. So talk about whether that benefit is mutually exclusive, whether that's the only like source of protein and all that stuff. So that means the other side. Come on. Come.
Okay, so whenever talking about the price of something, we must keep in mind that the problem of Malaysia is that we have rising problem of inflation. So this is a very much major factor affecting to why prices of things are very relevant to be increased. And then even if the person before said about chicken is the main source of protein, I think that there's a lot of there are many replacement of protein that we can take. For example, we can take soy, then we can have fish. I mean, even if you're vegetarian, there's a lot of alternatives than chicken. Then, okay, now the biggest main issue about this thing is about we must talk about the supply or demand. So if you have no supply and then the demand is high, of course the price must be increased. If ever, for example, if the price of one piece of chicken is 1 ringgit, then a million of people can afford chicken. But that is the problem there. When everyone can afford, so what makes a person deserve to eat chicken? Okay, I'm very sorry for this kind of statement. Not deserve. No, I mean like, okay, let me put you in one situation. You're a teacher, you're a tutor. And then there's like 50 students that want to learn from you. And you can only take 40 students at a time. And then some people like offer you like 20 ringgit per hour. And then some people will offer you 40 ringgit per hour. So logically, which one will you choose? I believe you will choose the 40 ringgit one because it's more beneficial to you. That is what's happening in the current government status quo. So I believe that's the only one and main point that is coming from my side. So I open the floor for any rebuttals.
Wow. Yeah, oh my god. Okay, so first of all, anyone on YouTube Live, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And goddamn, thanks for the point.
Alright, thank you.
So I would just like to add a little more from one of my teammates that said just now. Chicken is it's a big source of protein, and we really have to think about how people in lower income households gain their protein. If you look at their diet styles, it's mostly poultry. If you look at traditional foods, it's mostly poultry. Whether you want to say chicken or meat, it is part of Malaysians' life. So when you want to talk about alternative types of protein, you really have to factor in the cost. So my family, we usually go to Jaya Grocer to like buy our groceries and things like that. But in Jaya Grocer, you can find plant alternatives. However, if you go to my day per se, I'm not, downgrading my day or anything. But I'm just saying that if you go to my day per se, you wouldn't be able to find alternative types of protein other than, let's say, tempeh or like tofu or like those kind of things. But if you want to find like meat substitutes that is cheaper than chicken, that is not reality. Instead, what we should do is not, and if you want to talk about like inflation and things like that, yeah, I cannot debate, like I cannot argue with that because that is true. That is something that we are facing right now. I think what instead should be done is that so these brands, right, that sell chicken, they don't hog the profits because this is also another time where they can just increase as much profits as possible, and it comes to the detriment of the people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that one. Actually, I would like to do this thing where I drag two people, one from each section, and then make them answer each other. Okay, so let's do that. Actually, I want to grab the girl who pushed her friend to answer the question just now. So, come on, girl. Karma is getting you. Okay, so Brian, yeah, you. Yes. Okay, so both of you are from opposite sides. Okay, actually you guys can decide who would like to go first. Girl, what do you mean which side you want? You answer the door. It's okay. Okay, you start. It's yours.
Alright, so based on this very quote and from all the answers and rebuttals from everyone just now, and I would like to particularly focus on the price. Just now we are on the side of protein, right? So now on the price. So actually, there's a debt ceiling of like 13.50 per chicken, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason why you should increase the price is because the inflation is one thing. The other is that government subsidies. If you think about that, government subsidies, right now have to be diverted into other sectors, right? In a lot of other more potent sectors, not just on chicken. And one more thing is that once the government subsidies are gone, of course the price will go up. And the second factor is having a middleman, right? A lot of the sectors, poultry sectors, a lot of the meat sectors, they have a middleman. So once the prices increase because of the middleman, of the existing middleman, right? So I would like to open the floor to the agreement side on these two issues that I brought up, and please go ahead.
Okay, so I think they should increase, right? Oh, I should. Okay. So, it should not increase the maximum price of chicken because then is it accessible for the B40s to, buy other meats, proteins? Because like in the rural areas, like what other options are there? You don't buy chicken? Well, I don't really have much to say to you. But yeah.
Recently, right, I think the T20 community are going to have their subsidies taken away, right? So these subsidies could actually go into B40 oriented like food products, not just on chicken. So the chicken prices are going to go up because the subsidies are being taken away of B20, right? So it's going to go to B40 anyway, right? So the T20 community are going to spend more on chicken because the price have increased since the subsidies are already right. So B40 is no longer an issue since we're going to subsidize for that, but E20 people still have to pay the same amount or higher. That's a hypothetical situation.
What's going on? Okay, so I think we've done a lot of debating today. I think we can move on to the last little thing.
Alright guys, don't stop yet. Alright, we have one more.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit different, so I'll pass it off to Warren.
Thank you, Victor. So, for the last motion everyone's been waiting for. Jadi saya akan bertukar kepada bahasa Melayu untuk kita menyediakan diri bagi debat dalam JPA. Jadi, usul kita pada hari ini berbunyi PT3 patut dimansuhkan. Sekiranya anda bersetuju bergerak ke kiri saya, sekiranya anda membangkang bergerak ke kanan saya.
Penggunaan bahasa Inggeris sangat diharamkan pada masa ini.
Kamu semua tidak mengambil tiga kan?
Baiklah, okey, jadi semua orang sudah berada di posisi yang anda inginkan. Bagus.
Orang nak pilih ni.
Okey, siapa nak pilih angkat tangan? Siapa tak nak? Okey, jadi ayo. Apa sih? Okey, semua orang bertenang. Baiklah, jadi saya akan meminta pihak yang bersetuju dengan usul kita seorang volunteer bersudah bela memberikan pendapat saya. Siapa? Nama?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Saya asal daripada Shah Alam, Selangor, Malaysia. Okay, jadi saya membangkang, saya menyokong PT pada dimansuhkan. Pertama sekali kerana batch kerana golongan yang mengambil PT3, yang golongan terakhir yang mengambil PT3, maaf. Golongan terakhir yang mengambil PT3, kita boleh lihat PT3 ni dia macam kurang kualiti. Sebab apa? Jadi sebab apa saya kata PT3 ni kurang kualiti? Ya, pertamanya betul PT3 boleh digunakan untuk memohon untuk masuk ke sekolah asrama penuh, untuk masuk ke MNSM dan sebagainya. Tetapi pada golongan terakhir yang mengambil peperiksaan itu, ia kurang kualiti kerana rata-rata tempat memang dah tular di media sosial bahawa banyak sekolah yang membocorkan. Dia memang pada batch golongan terakhir tu memang nampak sangat banyak result yang mereka dapat tak berkualiti. Jadi antara sebab dia mungkin ada beberapa sebab macam cikgu nak jaga pelaksanaan sekolah dan sebagainya. Okay, jadi untuk apa kita teruskan benda yang tak berkualiti? Okay, sebab result yang sudah dapat, keputusan yang student semua dapat bukan berdasarkan, bukan seluruhnya atas student sendiri, malah mereka disuap. Okay, disuap dengan ada yang sampai tular yang mereka sudah bincang soalan yang akan keluar. Jadi apa tujuan kita teruskan benda yang benda yang tak boleh jadi penandaran yang sebenar. Okay, kalau dah semua orang boleh dah dapat bocor, jadi rata-rata semua dapat semua A, jadi mana kualiti kat situ? Okay, itu saja.
bukan membunuh untuk saudara. Tapi satu soalan sebelum saya minta sebarang bidasan. Angkat tangan, siapa rasa kena serang?
Siapa rasa kena
Siapa rasa kena attack?
Batch 04, tolong kena handle.
Baiklah, terima kasih. Jadi, untuk pihak siapa yang tidak membidas pendapat beliau? Kalau kita
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jadi, anda kata tadi tiada kualiti. Adakah anda pasti tiada kualiti? Kerana apa yang saya perhatikan, apabila tiadanya peperiksaan PT3 ini, kebanyakan pelajar hilang momentum dalam pembelajaran. Kerana apa? Kerana mereka rasa macam tingkatan 1, 2, 3 ni adalah zaman untuk mereka rasa gembira, tak perlu fikir pasal pelajaran. Rasa macam ya, ada masalah. Dan macam saya rasa banyak juga. Okey, macam kalau kita tengok peperiksaan SPM, akan ada soalan daripada tingkatan 1, 2, 3 untuk soalan matematik. Dan kalau awak semua tak kuasailah yang semua perkara yang akan dimasukkan dalam PT3 ni, macam mana awak nak dapat jawab SPM? Dan satu lagi, PT3 punya peperiksaan ini merupakan salah satu persediaan untuk awak menjawab peperiksaan SPM. Macam untuk batch kita 05, untuk siapa yang berumur 18 tahun, kita tak pernah mengalami peperiksaan macam PT3, jadi kita tak ada macam kita tak faham suasana peperiksaan tu macam mana dia sangat tertekan semua tu. Jadi saya rasa PT3 tidak patut dimansuhkan. Dia ada sesiapa nak membidas juga bidas saya tadi. Ada. Sama ada. Oh nak? Boleh. Kita pakai. Dia tak ada lagi. Jangan saya je.
Aduh, dah aku collect.
Berdasarkan bidasan yang telah diberikan daripada saudara yang membangkang usul tersebut, saya ada beberapa pihak pembangkang percaya bahawa PTT memang patut dimasukkan sebab ini perlu diambil sebagai sebuah peluang oleh sektor pendidikan untuk melakukan sejenis melakukan project based learning. So bagi okay, PTT memang patut dimasukkan sebab PTT bukan sahaja sebagai sebuah penanda arah. Pada pendapat saya, sebab budak-budak batch 05 tidak ada momentum kerana tidak mempunyai PT3 adalah sebab banyak cikgu atau banyak pelajar yang lebih tua daripada kita berkata bahawa sebab kita tak ada PT3, sebab itulah kita tak ada momentum, kita takkan belajar betul-betul. Saya rasa kata-kata tu, sentimen tersebut dan stereotip yang ada pada batch kita yang menyebabkan kita tidak belajar betul-betul untuk SPM dan bukan sebab PT3 tak ada. Okay, thank you.
Terima kasih saudara Arif. Jadi terima kasih kepada pihak kerajaan, pihak pembangkang. Biar saya kongsikan sedikit pendapat saya sebagai batch terakhir yang ambil PT3.
Golongan.
Margaret Iwan, selaku batch terakhir yang mengambil PT3, saya tidak mampu untuk mengatakan keputusan saya begitu berkualiti. Tetapi itu tidak bermaksud usaha saya tidak berkualiti.